the way when I try to break down, I do these mental exercises. I see negative or zero or void of evidence that we're in a simulation or that we're not thinking, we're not conscious being. I see a void and negative. So therefore, I can't go with that because there's nothing.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's false.
How would you evaluate evidence towards your existence without first assuming that you exist to evaluate the evidence?
Well, it's not the fact that you evaluate the evidence that you exist, right? It's the fact. It's not the fact that you have to assume that you exist. It's the fact that how you can come to how do you come to the conclusion what is evidence and what is not evidence, right? And what we all believe, what I believe evidence is, some positive or existent. And the very fact is that, like, when I try to imagine of not existing or imagine or find evidence that it may be an illusion of some kind.
I don't think you see the problem. How do you evaluate evidence without agency?
You don't necessarily like being. You don't have to agree that you exist to evaluate these. That's the problem.
No, we're not saying that you have to agree one way or the other, but when you're evaluating things, you're assuming that you exist or that.
Well, and what I'm saying is either you can go with a positive or negative. Like, you can go with a what if question. What if I don't exist? Or you can go, well, I only have evidence for existence.
You have to assume the law of identity to evaluate evidence. Otherwise, the evidence can be everything.
I don't think that's an assumption. I just don't have anything else to say is any other way. I have no evidence for that.
You're saying it's necessary that you assume it.
No, I don't think it's necessary. I think there's only one evidence for it, and that's that we exist.
Yeah, when you say there's no other way, you're saying it's necessary.
Well, I can only say it's not necessary if someone can show evidence for it, and I can't find any evidence for that.
But you need to assume it.
I don't have to assume nothing. I can just see what is something.
How would there be?
This is nothing.
I don't have to assume anything. There you go. You just assumed I.
No. I can see that this is something.
Yeah, you've just assumed. You've just presupposed I.
So when you're looking at the data, and
you just presupposed you.
You're ambiguity.
By looking at the data, you're presupposing.
You're ambiguity. You're doing an ambiguity fallacy. I'm talking right now, right?
So if you're looking at data, listen to me. If you're looking at the data, are you actually interpreting that data correctly or in a wrong?
Well, and that's the question. This is what it comes down to: philosophy and process. And like, what do you consider evidence, and what is evidence of it? Like,
no,
what do you consider the process of
question, dude, you're just running over everybody.
Yeah, I think the real issue is that evidence must be. It's like a higher fact. You have to have a foundational. A set of beliefs in order to even to come to the conclusion of what evidence could possibly be. You can't say I analyze evidence without many presuppositions below that statement.
Well, then if that was true, then you would never be able to get rid of those
no, you could. You can assume those presuppositions and then prove them false after the fact.
Okay. So what is so to me? I just disagree. I just disagree because I think that people are confusing words and abstract thought with physicalness, with the physical existence.
Do you not think that you could prove solipsism?
No, I don't think you can because you.
No, so Bitron.
You could prove solid.
You can't prove against a properly basic belief.
You can't disprove solipsism.
Yeah,
I can. That's why I disagree. Yeah, exactly. I think you can't disprove solipsism.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so positive. I'm thinking, I exist. That's a positive. Now, what is non-existent, non-thinking, non-consciousness? So what can we use in an example of non-conscious? Well, to give an example.
Do you know what solipsism is?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like.
I do know what solipsism is. You just don't like my argument because you've been parodying.
No, it sounds like you're not even talking about solipsism.
Yeah, because you're not addressing solipsism. That's why we're.
I like a solipsism is an idea that you can't know that you exist, right? Or you can only know that you exist.
No, that's not solipsism.
Right?
You can only know that you. No. It's either that you can only know that you exist, or the self is all that can be known to exist.
Okay, yeah, and that's pretty much what I'm saying.
It's the opposite. So, you a properly basic belief is that other people exist. Solipsism is the rejection of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first you have to establish you exist.
Other minds.
Get there, right?
Yeah, other minds.
So, if we all agree that we exist, we can get to the next stage, right? or that you personally exist. Well,
Well,
here's
you-
the thing. The next question: can you trust your senses? I say yes, 100%. I can trust my senses because I have no evidence or no factors saying that I can't trust my senses.
If
That
you
sounds
could
like begging
trust
the
your
question.
senses, you would have to assume that your senses were reliable and
I
giving
don't
you
have
the
to.
evidence that you couldn't trust your senses.
I don't have to assume anything. I can just gather the evidence showing that it does work that way.
Well, you're assuming that your senses are being reliable in you gathering that evidence.
Also, gathering
a
evidence
fallacy,
is completely consistent within a solipsistic
a
world.
fallacy. Here's the problem: a fallacy can only be a fallacy if you show evidence of the fallacy, right?
No.
And yes,
What
yes,
the fuck
yeah.
did you just say?
If I just say you're making a fallacy, what's the
Wait,
evidence?
Fryan,
how do I
Fryan,
justify?
Fryan.
You have
You
to
just said
justify.
that. Listen, Fryan,
Fallacy
you
is
just
an
said that
error
if
in
you
logic.
make a fallacy, it's not an actual fallacy unless somebody points it out.
No, I did not say that.
That's
I
exactly
said
what you
it.
just
I
said.
said no. I said a fallacy is only a real fallacy if you show evidence for that fallacy that you're claiming that it
That's
is a
false.
Right,
No
here's the
one has
problem.
to
I think
resist.
you're equivocating with evidence and justification there.
Can you define evidence? What kind of evidence are you talking about?
Oh.
Like empirical evidence? Like what are we talking about here?
I would say any evidence to me is anything that exists, like evidence of existence. That could be an observation, and what would trump an observation is testing, and physical testing of the observation.
So empirical evidence.
Yeah, but like you could go with
Anything that
observations. There's nothing else to go with. But what would trump
I still think
existence
the
is
problem
evidence.
is imperial evidence is just on such a higher level than the foundational philosophical claims that we're addressing.
You see, I don't think so. I think
if you're talking about empirical evidence,
yes or no on
how can you approach empirical evidence without assuming the reliability of your senses? How is that even possible?
I don't have to assume. I can see that they work.
No. Right, you can't deny the properly basic belief of your senses being accurate with evidence. It's just not possible.
Let's take eyesight, right? If my eyesight was changing, like the colors of my eyesight and things were changing colors, or like they say one day I would see red, and they say mine would be blue.
A schizophrenic who says, "Well, I see these things, so they're true."
Well, hold on.
I mean, my senses are reliable. I see
so you're gonna let me finish. So if my eyesight, right, if I see something that one day this pen is red and it's the same pen and tomorrow is blue, and just my eyes always changing, my interpretation of the data is always changing, then I can say, well, I don't know what these colors are because they're always changing, and so therefore I can't trust my senses to tell me what these colors are, right? And I think everyone
you face the problem of induction there.
So, and I think people mistakenly confuse. I think my eyes work exactly the same all the time. I don't think they magically change.
What if your memory is not reliable enough to know that? What if you just think they've been working that same way?
Have you heard of last Tuesdayism? Have you heard of last Tuesdayism?
No. I mean, like I'm not going to be able to take in every piece of information because I don't care.
Last Tuesdayism is a proposition that everything was created last Tuesday. Everything, the entire world, the entire universe, and your memories just came.
Okay. And this is how you disprove that. What is your evidence that everything was created last Tuesday?
Oh my gosh.
No,
you don't know. You don't know the definition of prove. The definition of prove is to demonstrate it false. No, you're just rejecting. There's a difference between.
I'm asking. I am asking.
Look,
there's a difference between rejection and proving something false. You're not proving it false. You're just rejecting the assertion. You're saying all you're doing is saying the assertion does not have evidence.
You can't prove something. You can't prove something that doesn't exist.
Well, you're presupposing it doesn't exist. But so the problem with that example,
I'm not presupposing. I'm saying that it doesn't exist because you've given me no reason to say it exists.
Look, the problem with that last Tuesday, I know it as last Thursday, whatever. But the problem with combating it is that all statements that you make, like I have a memory that's longer than a week, and all this stuff, it's consistent with the actual model because on the model, things are created last Tuesday, but they're created with the appearance of age.
And normally, when people talk about evidence, they don't say everything that exists or something that exists. They say evidence is something that increases the likelihood of a proposition or something. true or hypothesis.
And see,
true.
and like to me, I don't.
So now, if
I
you have
reject.
two
I reject.
competing, now fine, if you have two competing hypotheses, right? The hypotheses of last Tuesdayism and another hypothesis that I exist and that's there's the universe was here before last Tuesday, right? Now, if everything that you say is consistent with both of those hypotheses, it doesn't increase the likelihood of either hypothesis. Therefore, it's not evidence.
Oh, fuck.
I don't agree with that. I believe that you can observe and test everything in the physical world.
That's consistent with last Tuesdayism.
You see, here's the thing. Like, just because you don't do a memory recall on everything you did or everything you said or how many times your heart beat or how many breaths you took during the day, it's not because like you have bad memory. It's not because your brain's not working, is working differently. It is because your brain, like your senses, your function is working the same. But due to the fact that you're focusing on certain things to remember for memory recall, you're not going to remember everything because you're not trying to remember every single detail that your senses took in. You're putting things in an order of that should be remembered versus not remembered.
Okay, I'm gonna say this. That is evidence for this hypothesis. Now replace evidence with your definition for evidence and restate that sentence.
I didn't really.
That is evidence for this hypothesis. Restate that sentence, but replace evidence with your definition of evidence.
So what my definition of existence is evidence of existence is evidence? Like anything that exists
You're
is
very
evidence?
quiet.
Everything that exists, anything that is a positive net worth of existence, I guess, is evidence. Is that what you want me to say? Because that's what I was been talking
You don't
about.
say is evidence. Your definition of evidence, replace it in that sentence.
With what your evidence? I mean,
Oh
are
my
we using
God.
the ambiguity policy here, dude? Like, I understand that you believe evidence is something.
I'm
that I
showing
believe
you a
evidence
problem
is
with your
existent.
fucking definition.
No, my
And
problem.
why, when people normally say evidence, they use it differently than the way you're using it.
And why then? I don't think my problem is. I think the problem is like people don't like that it disproves their fundamental prime
Well,
premises.
because you're changing the definition of evidence.
Well, what we got to go with what is real, not with what is abstract when it comes to words.
How do you know what's real?
The physical world.
The physical? Yeah. How do you know what's physical? How do you know what's real in that sense?
Oh, well, I mean,
you can't use evidence because evidence is just the thing.
Well, evidence.
So you can't use evidence to show the thing as a thing. That's circular reasoning.
Evidence is a classification of the physical world. This is how we communicate. Two different things. Now, if you want me to grunt and point and draw circles or something, we can do that too.
Wait, can we back up? Do you think that science can answer all questions?
I think science and spirituality are one and the same. And I think when it goes bad in array, it's because people don't agree with one or the other.
Science and spirituality are the same thing.
I think the reason why they're not the same thing in today's world is because people don't like the answers.
What the fuck is spirituality to you? And what's science?
Are you a dualist?
Spirituality. I'm a monster dualist.
But you think the scientific method can answer all meaningful questions? Anything that science can't answer is not meaningful? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No. I think you have your consciousness, right? Which is like an idea of free will, like because you can imagine whatever the hell you want in anything. And then you have the physical world, and sometimes what you imagine just you can't make in the physical. It can't happen in the physical world, right? It has to relate, and your body's the tie between that. Your genetics or whatever, your functioning, your brain function, your senses is a tie between those two worlds. And so what you're looking at. Oh, I think I lost track, man. Someone just distracted me right now. Hold on.
Just take another hit from the fucking bong and come back to it.
No, but okay. But what I'm trying to say is like what I was trying to say about spirituality is like metaphysics. There's good metaphysics and there's bad metaphysics, and there's different sects of metaphysics, right? And the metaphysics I follow is the physical world exists, and my abstract thoughts and how I communicate must be in line with the physical world to make sense. Other metaphysics says, no, what I imagine is true, so I must select the data that says my imagination is true.
Wait, so why have a metaphysical system then? Why not just be like a materialist?
Well, because if it was material, we wouldn't be having this conversation, bro.
Okay, elaborate.
If it was
Elaborate.
if it was pure input output, we wouldn't be
Hey
able.
boys,
No, like
What-
why? Like,
Yeah,
why?
I'm telling you, if it was pure input output, we
you are
wouldn't-
ignoring me.
Shut up,
Okay.
Yoshima. We're having a conversation.
if it was pure input output, we wouldn't be able to have conversation. We wouldn't be able to have leisure time, because everything would just whatever data is put in, or whatever it is, the mixture of things that are put into us, the output will always be the same. We will never be able to reject data. We will always have to accept the data.
What?
This seems like a very like this whole like your
Could you give
entire
me an argument
worldview,
for that?
your entire conception of materialism seems sort of centered around information theory, not necessarily much physics.
I mean, that's pretty much what it is, though, in my book. Like, either
Oh, so
the
you-
data
I'm
exists,
talking about- I'm
either
talking
the
about-
data exists.
I don't
or it
care about
doesn't.
your book. I care about objective reality.
I mean, I don't think you do, because if you did, you would see it my way.
What? What?
Wow.
That's what every ideologue says. You fucking idiot.
No,
Jesus
I think
Christ.
I think the fact that you're saying that, like, so
I already like
most people are like, you believe in the world is deterministic? Yes or no?
Yes, I do.
Exactly. So, and my point is, if what you were saying,
However,
how did I know that you believe that was deterministic? Obviously,
I
from
said
what
I
you
was,
said just now.
I said I was a materialist, or I sort of
like
came
before
at
that,
it with a
before,
materialistic hinge.
yeah, because you came from that hinge, and I understood where you were coming from. Well, here's the thing: the world doesn't work off of input output like a human being doesn't. There is randomness, right? There is
I feel like
randomness in this
no,
universe,
in my opinion,
and
randomness
so
is
and
a
that's just how
flaw
it
in
is.
In my opinion, randomness is just a flaw in anthropic reasoning. We just
Well,
can't plug in all the variables.
I think it's silly. Like when you roll a dice.
If I had
you ro-
Laplace's demon, if I had a divine calculator, there would be no randomness for me.
if
Wait,
I
you think rolling a die is random?
hold on. If I roll a dice, right, and I have 6 options on the dice, right?
Like again,
Wait,
this
hold
is
on,
just
the
a-
output. Hold
this
on,
is
wait.
a flaw in anthropic reasoning.
No, it's not.
If-
No, I'm
did
gonna
you
show-
listen
I'm
to
gonna
what he
show-
said? The thing is, you could determine the outcome by measuring all the variables.
No, you can't. 'Cause
Yes, you can, because you measure the start position,
this
you
is-
measure the velocity that it's thrown, you measure what it bounces off, and you can determine the outcome.
Exactly.
You can't determine the variables, and I'll tell you why. Because when you throw a dice in a vacuum or whatever, if you sit there and think you can measure all the variables for a dice,
Dude, you know
what
there's
you're doing is
literally- there's literally-
the only way you can say that dice is going to be that if you control all the variables.
You know, there's literally multiple like
Oh, that's
sort of
absurd.
subfields of mathematics that study this extensively, like chaos theory and
Look, you don't-
probability theory.
You don't
You
have to
literally look at all
know
the
the
variables.
outcome to be a determinist. You can just have a conception and understand that if you knew all the variables and you could plug them in, that you would be able to determine the outcome. It
So
doesn't
what
mean you have
happens?
to know
What
the
happens
outcome.
first? What happens first? The action or the variable or knowing
It's
the variable?
irrelevant to what I said.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Because if you throw the dice for you to get those variables, it has to start. It has the motion
Fryan,
has
what
to start.
causes
No,
the
that
dice?
literally-
Wait, Fryan, let's just go through this and make it really simple for you. What causes the dice to land on a certain side?
The dice is evenly weighted and it can hit and bounce.
Right.
It
what
does-
causes-
like,
it's
well,
gonna
wait,
be-
if you-
it's gonna
if you put
be-
one
it's
weight
gonna
on
be
one
the-
side, it's always
gonna be
gonna
what
land
Chum said, right? It's gonna be the exact force that it was thrown. It's gonna be what Wilson said. It's gonna be dependent
Okay.
upon what it bounces
Here-
off
here's
of.
the
The
thing.
force
You're
that it
confusing.
produces depending upon each
You
bounce.
can see. So
Now,
what
Fryan,
you're
if we had
describing,
access to all the knowledge, right, all the information that happened,
you're not describing randomness. You're describing
There is no
control.
such thing.
No.
Stop
Hold
interjecting.
on. You're describing controlling the dice. Yeah, I can
No, we're not
literally walk up
controlling-
to the
No,
dice.
you're
Wait. I can walk up to a piece of dice, make the face one, and put it down. It's like there is no such thing as random.
It's almost like you
That's
believe
exactly
if
what you're doing.
we made a computer program that was dice simulator, you'd call it random.
No, and like here's the thing. Like
It's a flaw in
you're trying to
anthropic
say you're trying to say abstract thought trumps the physical world. Doesn't.
No, I'm
I could
not.
give you an example though of the
I'm
physical
literally
world where it
That's
wouldn't be
being
random.
said.
Okay,
You
so
could control the surfaces that it's thrown in. You can throw it with a machine, and you can make the space that it's thrown in a vacuum. And it'd be very easy to measure the outcome. You could repeat it
Okay.
over and over again.
okay, so what you're looking at,
Yeah, but that's a controlled variable.
what you're looking at is this. Like the universe is infinite, right? So the fact is that you can never ever control for an outcome or you
That's
can
an
never
assertion.
predict randomness.
Yeah.
Randomness exists within the universe.
How
Like,
One
can
with-
you
The problem with
you
your
just said-
statement is where you said
existence.
right question mark. That
Your
was the problem with your
argument is-
statement.
The
Things
roll
are
of a
random
dice
because
That
things are
was
random,
effectively
and
what
you
he
can
said, right,
never
question?
understand that they're random.
He's basically
Okay,
he's presupposing the infinite.
No,
is
you're,
throughout the
Ryan,
no.
universe.
do you not understand, like-
I reject what you're saying, because everything you're describing is not taking the variables in consideration, is controlling the variables.
No, it's not, dude.
No.
Literally, the thing is,
All right.
it's like I said earlier, randomness is a flaw in anthropic reasoning.
Okay,
We
so
cannot,
why is randomness
like,
a flaw?
it's literally impossible to know all the variables. But if you had Laplace's demon or a fucking divine calculator, you could do this.
Okay, so what if okay, let's go to the movable object versus the unmovable object when it comes to randomness. Now, what that means is this, that there is times in the universe, and we've proven this there's already been proven on a quantum level, but there's also on a macro level in the universe, that both sides could be weighted the same, doing two different things, and it could collide. A plus B equals C in a deterministic world. But these things also exist. A plus B may be a different answer within the physical existence. And you can never, ever determine which one it will be, for the simple fact they're evenly weighted.
Yeah, like I said, a flaw in anthropic reasoning.
Well, I mean, no, that's
That
not
doesn't-
flawed,
that
because
doesn't-
that
that doesn't,
actually exists. That actually exists.
Yeah, like I said, a flaw in anthropic reasoning.
I don't think we're in agreement, because I think you say randomness doesn't exist. And
No, we're just too dumb to intuitively understand quantum superposition.
I don't think that is. I think that's a different conversation right there. I think we can understand things,
It's the
but you
same
have to read the
conversation.
pseudoscience.
Same
I
exact.
think you're not in control. I think you're letting people's fantasies get in the way.
I
of
think you're
science.
both you
Brian,
both have
you
your
don't understand
you
it.
I
both
think you're
have your
ideologically
conclusion based
possessed.
on justifications. You can't demonstrate your justifications for your conclusions in both of your arguments.
I think I did, and I think the fact is that
No,
randomness continues to exist. And
No,
I
no,
think
because you said the universe is infinite. Demonstrate that. So I think both of you have things you can't demonstrate. That's all. You're just butting heads on assertions you can't justify, really, to anyone else. It's just beliefs.
What's the argument against if someone were to say the universe is not infinite, but it's a certain size and it's expanding to infinity because it's continually expanding?
But I don't think it's expanding at all. I think what you're seeing is not expansion. I don't think what you're seeing is expansion. I think what you're seeing is physical, chemical change within the universe, and that's the only time we can see it. There's other things that exist.
You're way
Where
out
do
of
you
the
get your
scientific
information? Are you
mainstream
just like
now.
thinking that you just come up with everything? You're just
No,
like
I don't come up with it. I don't come up with anything. I'm not Einstein. I don't
Look,
agree with Einstein.
even fucking Darth Dawkins
That's
fucking
pretty
argues
self-evident.
with red shift, blue shift.
Look, red shift, blue shift, and what? And you talk about stars. So show me the evidence that the reason why those red blue shift and red shift and blue shift, tell me that's because the stars are traveling away from us, or that's because the wavelength of that light is going slower than
Can we just try to stick on
The
one
wavelength
thing? We've been
implies
jumping back so
traveling.
much.
yeah. Well, the red length is
That's the
traveling,
reason
but
why
we're talking about
scientists
the distance.
say
We're
that
talking
there's
about the
expanding
distance of the
universe.
star. We're talking about the distance of that star from us
Correct.
is expanding or expanding. But I say that we can prove right now that wavelength period, that lights have already been proven in a vacuum goes at different speed based off their wavelength.
I don't know what the fuck.
Quote unquote
Goes at the same
deconspanding.
Light always travels.
Squirrels have nuts.
Listen, Fryan, I
Light
just
doesn't
wanna-
have travel.
Can we just wait? Let's stick on this random thing that we've been jumping back and forth. So
Uh,
much. I think it's just something simple that you should be able to get your head around.
No,
So
I
if we
understand
were-
what you're saying.
listen,
Because
Fryan,
like you
if
got to
we were
go.
to go back in time, right? If the event happened where we threw the dice in the road and everything, right? Then we were to go back in time, and one person did not actually have the knowledge of what it landed on, but someone else who had the knowledge of what it landed on, who studied it intensively, right, and kept going back in time, used a fucking high-speed camera, knew every physics that was involved with that fucking dice roll. Do you think that they handed them all the numbers that person that came back in time could figure out what the fuck the number that the dice landed on?
See, I think you're misunderstanding.
Just answer the question.
I think that has nothing to do with
Answer the question.
That has nothing to do with what we're
Listen,
talking about.
jackass, just answer the fucking
What do you
question.
want me to answer? I disagree with the whole premise that the fact that we can go back in time and the fact that
You
the
don't
dice
have to.
roll.
It's a
It's
hypothetical.
a thought experiment.
Well, your hypothetical is literally a loaded question.
Look, I am wearing a red shirt, not a blue shirt. I disproved your hypothetical, so therefore I don't have to answer the fucking question.
Well, I think there's something wrong with your eyes because I have a green shirt on.
God damn, dude. It's just impossible to get anywheres with you.
You really showed him, Fryan.
And well, here's the thing: because you believe your imagination.
Look, I'm not even going to have a conversation with you if you're not going to have a conversation.
I paid the price for answering
I-
the hypothetical. I said I'm a homosexual, and that was a quote of mine. Thanks.
Fryan, how do I believe?
Well, that was your own fault.
No, that was your hypothetical. I'm not homosexual.
Oh, you are a homosexual. That's
How do I believe my imagination trumps the physical
Lawson,
world?
you would go
You're
gay
the
for
one who
me, though,
literally
wouldn't
said.
you?
You're the
Maybe.
one who literally said you believe your worldview is like justified by metaphysical externalities. Like how is
I
like
didn't say that
physics-
at all.
You
I
were trying
didn't
to-
say that at all.
You're trying to make an argument for metaphysics right now.
I didn't say that at all. I said I was saying that there's different types of metaphysics and there's different sects of metaphysics, and not all of them are good.
Okay, so can you explain yours? Because you didn't really elaborate on that.
Okay, I believe that the physical world exists, right? And then our abstract mind must fit within the physical world, not the other way around.
Okay,
so
so
you
then you
think-
don't believe in an abstract mind that is like overarching.
I believe that like we have our abstract mind or our consciousness. It's we can imagine and think whatever we want, but when it comes to the physical world, a lot of those things that we imagine and think what we want doesn't play out.
So you're
Look,
foundational.
you're not even so silly.
Can you think your thoughts before you think them?
Probably not.
Depends on how you view time, Jovan.
Do you have free will?
Yeah, consciousness is free will.
False.
Consciousness is free will. So dogs have free will too?
Probably.
Ants have free
They
will?
get- Anything with a consciousness has free will.
Plants have free will?
Well, there's this one study. I don't know if plants have consciousness, but like there's this one study that shows that a plant can secrete a certain kind of plant has been proven to secrete a poison or a scent or a fluid when its nose is being eaten, but that plant can decide how much it wants to secrete.
So plants have free will.
No, that's begging the question because you just said decide.
It's true.
How did you justify the
Well,
hold
hold on. I don't want to get on that right now. Or you can do that in a second. But Fryan, what's your definition of free will?
My definition of free
Consciousness,
will.
apparently.
My definition is free will that is the choices we can make and the contemplation and the fact that we can reject or accept or create something new with the information.
How do you know that?
Because I'm doing it right now.
I reject that.
How do you know
That's why
that?
I'm doing that. How do I know that?
How do you know
Because-
you're doing it?
Because I can observe that I'm doing it.
How do you?
Couldn't
Are
what
you?
you're doing right now be consistent if you didn't have free will?
If what I would say again.
Couldn't what you're doing right now, or everything that you just said, couldn't that all be consistent with you not having free will?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because I can reject everything you say. I can walk away. I could do what I want.
No.
That's just how it is. I can do
You're
whatever
just,
I want.
saying, you're just presupposing that you have the free will.
I'm not presupposing I'm having free will. I'm saying this is the only thing that we can observe with that free will. To
Man,
say
this
that we
guy is-
don't
It's
have free
begging the
will,
question to say,
Shoot.
I have free will, therefore I have free will.
I think
Saying
you're
I
doing
can
the.
walk
I
away.
think you're doing
can't
the.
walk away is saying I
I think
have the
you-
free will to walk
Oh
away.
my
I think.
gosh.
I think you're doing.
Not good,
I
Fryan.
think you're doing the ambiguity fallacy because you're putting stock in the words. I'm communicating with you, right? I'm not
wait,
saying.
what word did
I'm
you
not
say?
saying for you.
I'm putting stock in the words he's
You're
communicating.
putting stock in the words that like when I say I'm talking about I because I'm talking to you. So when I say I, but you're trying to and you're like I'm doing some other statement or declaration or something like that, and that's not happening like that. What I'm saying is we're communicating.
Listen,
I say I.
listen
I
to me,
think.
Yeah,
Fryan.
you're
I think-
misunderstanding,
I think
Fryan.
he's
When you communicate,
rambling and making incoherent statements.
Try and follow Jovan's path.
Like, let him lay it out to you and just answer the questions.
Okay, go ahead, Jerron. Tell me how you have no evidence that we don't exist, but tell me how
Holy
I should
shit.
go with that.
What is this?
He's
No,
throwing you a
tell me.
loaded question. Here you go,
I'm not.
Jovan.
I didn't ask the question.
Tell me how you have no evidence.
That's not. Tell me how you don't have evidence, and so I should believe in nothing.
I'm still waiting for you to explain to me what free will is.
I told you. And then you started questioning what I believe in free will, or why I believe that, and then you.
No, you didn't. You said
questioning.
consciousness first, but I doubt you're
Well,
going to say
consciousness.
that
Okay, so
free will and consciousness are
consciousness, free will,
identical.
consciousness.
Are they identical?
Free will? Well, I think they're not identical, right? But they're not identical that like free will is consciousness. But what it is that consciousness.
So you can have
is our free
consciousness
will.
without free will.
Wait, ask him what the difference
I don't
between
think so.
agency
Consciousness,
and free will is.
I don't think consciousness is. You can't have consciousness without
Or like
free will.
Will and there a difference in your view between will and free will? Will is agency, and agency implies, making choices and stuff. But
Well, okay, I tell you what. Let's look up what Oxford says what free will is, and I'll tell you if I
God.
if I agree with
so
that.
you're saying you haven't thought this out very much.
No, I have. I just haven't. I haven't.
Why
talked
are
about it.
you none of you guys calling him out on the fact that he just said consciousness is an emergent property of free will?
I didn't say consciousness was a emergent property of free will.
I didn't hear that.
I said
He said you cannot have consciousness without free will.
I didn't say that. I actually said.
Yes, you did. That
I
was
said-
word for word.
Oh, did I? Okay.
I didn't
Did I
hear
have
that.
consciousness
But
without free will? No, I did not say that.
You
Dude.
should have this guy talk to John or take.
If I said that, then I mixed up my words.
It's almost like nobody's run a determinist argument against you before.
Or like
No,
he's
they
not
have.
looked
It's just
into
that
it, or-
there's no evidence. No, they have. There's just no evidence. for
No,
determining.
the problem is when you're saying there's no evidence, it's like if you were to present evidence, it'd be consistent with both hypotheses.
I don't think so. I think you're making that claim. Show me how it would.
I mean, I have plenty of good evidence that implies because I mean, there's an intuition inbuilt to humans that we do have free will and our choices are meaningful and that that we're actively making decisions. But there are experiments and good reasons to think why we should doubt our intuitions on free will and that really that things are more deterministic and that the choices that we make aren't actually being actively chosen; that they're being made a few seconds before we actually make them. And then there's experiments that where scientists would influence patients to look a certain direction or move their arm or do a certain number of things, and the person feels that they're making those decisions of their own free will, and the scientist asks them
yeah, I've seen that study.
why they're
I've seen that
making
study,
those
and
decisions,
there's an actual study that
and then
did prove that. You see?
and the person will actually make up some post hoc reason, will make up an excuse of why they did that action.
Yeah, introspective data is really not that good to go with. We all know that. Now the fact is that
You're just dismissing it.
I'm dismissing it
All
because
you do is just say it's bad evidence, and then let's move on.
I'm trying to explain. The reason why that what you're saying is wrong is because what you're equating to, there's some bleeps and blops into your brain and so therefore we don't have free will because we can see these are flaring up before you even get a chance to think and act. But what you don't understand is
there's multiple
our
studies,
data are external. Like what connects our consciousness to the physical world is our bodies, right? Or our brain function. For that data to get to the point where we can contemplate upon it, it has to go through that system.
The fuck you. Look,
So
our
what?
brains are the source of our consciousness.
Yeah.
So, so
I didn't say that. I didn't say it wasn't. But
So
the brains
what?
are the
None
source of our
that has anything
consciousness.
to do with
Brains are
that's not a
the source of our
rebuttal.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Brian, the
It
idea
is-
of the conversation.
It is a rebuttal.
Not at all.
And you didn't listen to me at all.
Brian, the idea of the conversation is that
Don't cut
free
me off.
will doesn't exist, and which is like if you were talking to somebody about the satellite TV, you're talking about how they change the fucking channels, and the other guy is talking about under what circumstances the channels change. I mean, you're
I just addressed that, and you cut me off before I could finish.
You're talking about two entirely different things. I mean, personally,
Okay, so I'm not
I
actually.
believe that
I'm not.
humanity has I believe it's a compatibilist. I believe humanity has some free will, and you can do an experiment. I think you can do an experiment. I can, if I was to look you in the face in a quiet room without any distractions, and I would say, Fryan, I want you to imagine burning to death in a fire. Okay, you, I believe, would have the free will. At first, you'd have to start thinking about it in order for your brain to tag it with a mnemonic tag that it would. I understand what he's talking about, but beyond that point, you were free to stop thinking about it anytime you want to. And people regularly do cease thinking about things they don't want to think about, even after people have spoken about them in their presence. I mean, to me, that's why I believe at least we have some semblance of free will.
I disagree with what you just said, because you're confusing process of data before you can contemplate on it. See, so when you before the data can get to your consciousness, it has to be processed.
Yeah, well, I basically said that, except I didn't say it the way you would say it. And since you've been learning to say it one way all your life, you haven't been able to figure out that I just said the same thing you did.
No, I literally told him this earlier, and you said I was talking about you're talking about two different things.
No, because
he brought up a study. He brought up a study.
What you were talking about.
He brought up a study.
Because what you were talking.
Yes, he brought up a study. He brought up a study.
Hello,
and I said that exact same thing.
Talking now.
He brought up that study.
Talking now. I'm talking.
You're not gonna sit there and say something I didn't say and just say I was wrong.
Talking. We can do this one of two ways. We can do it easier. We can do it hard.
Either
we can do it easier. We can do it hard.
Either you shut your mouth and I can show you why you're wrong.
We can do it hard. You can either let me talk when it's my turn, or I can stop you talking when you think it's your turn.
I was literally talking. I was literally talking and you cut me off. Your turn was over. I started talking. You cut me off because you didn't like my like he literally went on, and I rebutted what he said. And he blew up talking.
All you want to. It's not going to change a damn thing. Nothing. The reason that the two things that I said, the reason that I mentioned a difference between the two of them, okay, is because you're talking about a complete set of control schemes, whereas I'm just talking about the initial time it takes for the brain to comprehend what's being thrown at it, right? It's almost like when you look in a file cabinet. You don't have to open up each file. You can just look at the little tab at the top, and the tab at the top says die in a fire, and you go, no, I'm not interested in that. You just move past the file folder. There, Fryan, now it's your turn to talk. Look at that.
Again, I will show you why you're fucking wrong and why you cut me off.
Away from the microphone.
Look, you piece of shit, stop cutting me off.
There we go.
Now the fact is, I said that he brought up a study, or he brought up I'm assuming he was referring to that study, and he brought up the fact that we can see that when we're doing a functional MRI scan, that we can see certain parts of the brain flare up before someone has a chance to react to it, and he says that disproves free will, and I was saying no, because the free will before we can interpret, before we can contemplate on the data on what we want to do with it, it has to be processed to the point where we can look at it on a conscious level. And then you said I was talking about a totally different thing.
Well, first of all, that's not what you were saying.
That's exactly what I was saying. That's exactly what I was saying.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Maybe you should listen instead of cutting people off.
Well, maybe if you weren't so hell-bent for leather on talking all the time, people wouldn't feel the need to. But that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, that's not what you said. Because if it is, I would have recognized it as being identical to my point of view. So it's obviously not what you said.
I don't agree. I don't agree with what you said when your point of view.
I understand that.
I do disagree. I do disagree that when you said I wasn't talking about what he was talking about.
Your own point of view is wrong.
Both disagreeing with big time.
I'm just saying. You literally said I was talking about something that he didn't bring up, and that's just not.
Except that's not what you were doing. So nice try.
So, Gus, if you go to the filing cabinet hypothetically, and then look at the note and say no, I don't want to go in there, how do you know that wasn't a predetermined response?
Well, I mean, past a certain point, to me, a predetermined response You know, to be perfectly honest with you, if you want to go the route that every single thing in our body is programmed from one end to the other, I don't know how to answer that directly, but to say that there have been times that that you know, how do I put this? I think humanity is well known for being contrary at times, and I'm not so sure how you can get contrariness out of a series of so-called program responses. I mean, you know, it's your physiology. When your physiology coughs, for instance, it's a sign that you're supposed to get away from what's making you cough, and yet millions of people still die every day of smoking.
But you could
Now,
probably,
if that's not free will, I don't know what is.
You could probably look. You could probably look at the history of where the urges to cough come from and why there's a physiological response, and you can also look at the history of why there is a need to satisfy dopamine.
So what is
which
determinism
is
on
why
a-
you would still smoke and still cough, even though you know
now,
the smoke.
here's an interesting question. There are millions of people who resist the urge for dopamine and obey the cough, and millions of people who disobey the cough and embrace the urge for dopamine. Now, which one of those people indicates we don't have free will?
Right. The problem is you'd have to measure their influx of dopamine from all sources, not just one. So just because they are getting they refuse to get dopamine from smoking, doesn't mean they're not getting dopamine elsewhere, like sugar.
I don't believe that for a second.
Explain
because
how
we wouldn't be able to measure it.
Explain how dopamine takes away from free will.
First of all, dopamine isn't the only reason why people smoke. Right?
And
It's
even-
not
even
just
if-
about the dopamine.
Even if you
Well,
are
that's the
addicted-
that's the
you're not-
addiction case, right?
Brian, you don't
Even
even
if you
think
are
that Gus is agreeing with you, but he is. Like he's on your
no,
side, and
I-
you're just too stupid to
I
recognize it.
literally agree with his premise. We were disagreeing
Yeah,
on
this
another
is
matter.
insane though.
I would literally agree that Gus agrees with me on a fundamental level, but we were disagreeing on the fact that I was talking about something else other than what you were talking about. So maybe you should keep up the conversation. All right. The fact
You
is,
absolutely were.
the fact
Bizarre.
no, I wasn't.
Brian, this is how you make conversations fall apart. It's that little barb at the end. That little shot you take at the end of a sentence at people.
Bro, these guys literally put on different fake accounts and they attack people through fucking trolling. I don't want to hear.
What?
The fact is, the fact is.
All right, as long as you know what you're getting into, Cola.
The fact is that you're saying that dopamine or that you're getting a signal in the brain takes away from your free will. I don't see it. Show me how I can't deny that feeling. Show me how I have to do what that feeling is telling me to do.
Show me how I can't deny your denial.
Well,
you
listen, it is very simple, right?
You want a falsification? Oh, good luck with that.
Well, I think we can demonstrate how consciousness is not determined by these processes, or at least
fucking
directly.
Tasteless is talking again. Somebody shoot me in the head, quick! Jesus.
Determinism.
Well, if you don't want me to
A+B
demonstrate
equals C,
that, that's fine.
right?
Dude, I mean.
And we can
I don't
prove
want
that
you
A
to
plus B
demonstrate
doesn't
anything
equal C
unless-
all the
I'm
time.
just imagining that
walking through
this is the one time that Tasteless has a golden nugget of information he needs to share with the world, and we've all just denied him due to his history.
Yeah, I don't hope that because I've been on the fucking other end of it for far too many times.
Motherfucker,
So
every time I speak, I open my mouth. It's a nugget of information.
Yeah, see, Tasteless was going to usher in the golden ages of the humanity, but we shut him down.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you don't want to get
you wouldn't
this
know the golden age of humanity if it asked him questions.
pearls of knowledge, that's
Pearls
fine.
of knowledge,
It's up to
pearls
you.
of something.
No, we're
That's
better
fine.
off not knowing Tasteless. Just keep it to yourself.
That's
Just
fine.
keep
man.
us all
Just,
sane,
finish
Tasteless.
your argument.
Keep us all sane, buddy.
Good.
All right, so Fryan, I'm gonna read you a paragraph of certain experiments from Jose Delgado, okay? And then
Here
I
we
want to
go.
hear your response on how.
Sure, I've
free will is-
already addressed this, but go ahead. I already addressed this, but go ahead.
No, you
There we
haven't.
go.
You just heard me. You just heard me like referencing an
I've already
experiment.
read Jose. Yeah, go ahead. They redid this experiment. What was this? His original one was done in the 60s
Which
or 70s.
experiment?
They redid the experiment.
Wait, how do you?
with
Yeah, how do you
functional
know which
MRI scans.
experiment I'm going to reference before I even get to it?
Because
for you to
this
say
is
that they've
the-
done
I'm
it.
pretty Because I'm pretty sure this is his famous one. His famous one about that disproves free will, right?
Which experiment could you be talking about?
I
I
don't
haven't
know the
presented
actual
yet.
title of. I don't know the actual title, but if it's going off of what you said earlier, are you doing his original experiment or the one that's been recreated with functional MRI scan?
Well, I don't know the name of it, but I know that content. Yes, your mic is open, man.
And
so I'm going to read the experiment here. In one subject, electrical stimulation of the brain produced, quote, head turning and slow displacement of the body to either side with a well-oriented and apparently normal sequence, as if the patient were looking for something, end quote. Gus, I really want to read this, but music's coming over your mic. This was repeated 6 times over 2 days, confirming that the stimulation was actually producing the behavior. But the subject, who did not know about the electrical stimulation, considered the activity spontaneous and offered reasons for it. When asked, "What are you doing?" he would reply, "I'm looking for my slippers. I heard a noise. I'm restless. I was looking under the bed." Okay, your response. Fryan?
"26 people. It's this quiet. Interesting."
Hello.
Whoa.
Not sure. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Hi, Tasteless.
Hey, what's up? Who are you?
Agnes.
Hey, Agnes, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine. I'm fine. Where's JJ? Why don't you bring JJ over here?
Because JJ does what he wants.
Well, that's true, but you influence him, a great deal, no?
I don't influence him that much.
Really? Do you think he influences you?
No. In conversation, I guess we have good conversation.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, then again, I mean, JJ is a very interesting man.
He is.
Yeah, he is. Okay. Agnes, I don't know. Why are you so not why, but you seem to be very loyal, right? Are you always like this, like very principled?
Yes.
She's just a skank.
Are you a Christian or something?
What's wrong with JJ?
Where do
what's
you
wrong
get
with
these
JJ's
convictions,
a horrible
Agnes?
person.
Is it like a part of your
Is he a horrible
education,
person?
or?
Did y'all Peerless people kick him or something?
So
No, we didn't kick him.
Did you hear the experiment that I read out?
Yeah, I heard part of it. The storm was rolling in, and I had to go take care of something.
Okay. Do you want me to reread it?
Last storm.
No.
Send me the link. I already looked at it, but send me a link, and then I'll send you a link of the other side.
I don't
Fryan,
think
If
you
you
can
want,
say you've already looked at it if you're
I
asking
already
for
know
the link.
I looked at it. I just can't find the link.
I don't think you
I'm
have.
googling it right now.
Fryan,
I think I have.
Fryan, your definition of free will breaks the law of identity.
All right.
Blake's
Well,
law,
look, man. If you
I don't
can,
think so. I think we exist.
He said,
if you're actually interested and you get through reading it, I'd be happy to discuss it with you. It's very short. It's just like 2 or 3 pages long. Oh, I've already sent this to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I did read it. That's
Sent
what I
this
thought.
to you back in May.
Yeah, and like this is. Let me see if this is the one with the functional MRI scan. Because I think we had this
It's
conversation,
under.
or I had this.
It's under the section titled "Free Will and Neurology."
Okay. What when was this published? Do you know?
When was it published?
This one right here. This is
Wait, the experiments or the chapter 8 and chapter 9?
the experiment.
I mean, I can go look for that.
Or if you know the date of the book, that would tell me my answer.
Look, so the idea is that the experiments aren't saying 100% that free will can't exist or whatever, but under these examples, the patient was responding to neurological impulses, which some of which were given by the researchers and some of which were chosen by them, and in both instances, in both instances, the person thought that they were the one making the decision, and
but you see, that's the problem, and this is what I'm trying to tell you. Like, I believe like the reason why they're saying that they weren't choosing freely because they redid this test with functional MRI scan. They really recreated this test, right? And I don't have the link on me. I was googling it, but I couldn't find it. But they redid this with functional MRI scan and the information they show is just showing process of data, and you can sit there and say that, oh, something flashed up and your body reacted to it as a way to response, but that's like, yes, we exist, right? We exist in the physical world, and the bridge between our consciousness and the physical world is our body, right? So the data, we can look at it as data from the physical world, sends like something, and we can say, oh wow, this is something coming at me. I have limited data, but like it looks like a threat, so I'm going to react to it. But you can also deny the reaction as well.
I don't know anything that you're saying there is actually like meaningful towards free will.
It is meaningful. It really is meaningful.
I don't think he ever gets the
You're just saying that there's some spirit world out there, and our
I never
body's
said
the
there was. I
medium
never.
for the
Whoa.
spirit
You see, that's a
communication.
straw man. That's a straw man, like mother. I never said that. Like, I never said anything about no spirit world. I never said anything. That's just a
You
straight
said
up
our
crazy-
body's the medium that our consciousness uses to interact with the world.
Yes, our
So then
bodies
there's
are.
no-
Like, how can you gather data without your senses? If I were to cut off your senses completely from your brain, right, where there's no inputs, how can you gather data without that? If I ripped out your eyeballs, how can you gather visual?
With a machine that measures light.
Okay, how would you personally be able to gather the light, the different variants of light, and the different?
I could read it through the braille that it produces.
Okay, so the braille is producing something, right? But you would never be able to. You would never be able.
No, I
to
didn't say that. I
display
said the machine, the tool I'm using is taking light forms and putting them down in braille. So it can tell me the hertz of the light in braille.
You're telling me that what you're reading in braille is giving you as much information what you're taking in natural with the visual data with regular eyes.
If the data is accurate, yeah.
The data is so you're telling me you're going to be able to get the same exact information, and it's not an interpretation.
Well, no, you can actually false. You can actually get more information because the center of our eyes is equivalent to about 2 megapixels. So you could get a tool that actually measures more pixels than our eyes. So yeah, you could measure more light forms in a given sample with the tool and convert that information into braille than with my eyes. That should be simple. You can see things with tools and with that you can't with your eyes.
I disagree. I think you live in a fantasy.
What the fuck does this have to do with free will? What the fuck does this have to do with free will?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing is,
it has to do with the data. It has to do with the data being gapped between the consciousness.
This appears to be a derail.
No, it's not a derail. It has to do with the physical world and free will and how we converse. I'm not.
Well, I wasn't here for this, but what is your definition of free will?
Free will is pretty much on the lowest level. A plus B equals C, A or B. Doesn't have a definite answer. The outcome can always be different.
A plus B
events
can
just-
equal A.
It's
So-
great.
Thank you.
He's just saying that events just happen spontaneously. Basically,
No, I'm not
randomness
saying
is
events.
the
That
alternative
actually
to
what it-
determinism.
That
So
I
if something
didn't-
is
I didn't
randomly
say-
chosen,
I didn't say
randomly
magic.
happens, then
I didn't
things
say
aren't
magic.
actually chosen.
I didn't say magic. I'm
I
saying the
didn't say
outcome doesn't
I didn't
have
say
a-
magic.
I
said
when you
randomness.
described it,
Definition,
you implied
free
it.
will.
You implied
How did I
that
imply
was the
magic
same.
if I said random? Does randomness imply magic? What
You
fucking...
said the word random, but the way you described how I said it implied that I was saying magic. And
I don't know what the fuck you think that I'm implying. Okay,
To
man.
be honest,
Just
I
listen to
think-
the words that are coming out of my mouth.
Mhm.
I really want you
It's
to listen to me and not listen to what's.
I
what
think
you
I heard.
I'm
I think I
implying.
misheard magic as well. I think that's where the confusion is from. I misheard it though, but I think I can see where Fryan's missing
I
it as
told
well.
him that I said magic, that I said random, and I didn't say magic. And then he said that he didn't hear me say magic, but he thinks that I
It
implied
can
magic.
randomly spontaneous from nothing. We live in the physical world,
No,
right?
yeah. So
you cannot get something from nothing. Energy
events
can only be transferred.
are either caused by something, or they happen randomly. That's the dichotomy. Now, if
Okay,
something
so
happens randomly, then there's nothing that causes it. It just happens. It's random.
We live in a physical world, right? And so there's nothing. You can't get nothing from something. You have to have. You're working with what you have,
Not
regardless.
responding.
But the outcome
Dude,
doesn't
this dude's
always have to
horrible and I
be
laughed at
this.
it.
In randomness and free will. It can be various things within that world.
He's like a tasteless, like a younger, like tasteless. Who's
No,
not
it's really not. You're just ignoring what I'm saying. It's a problem.
You know, when they say you're not an interlocutor, that's what they're accusing you of.
Well, so when they're saying
It sounds like you're just saying that a random action is a free will action.
no, random action isn't a free will because what random classified as random is classified as a non-conscious agent. It has to do with non-conscious agent.
Sure. Random means that it's uncaused.
Yeah, well, randomness exists within the existence. Like it doesn't exist outside existence.
Oh,
so
irrelevant.
So
Sure, if
no, it does.
free will
It does.
action
It's not irrelevant because
Sir?
if we're going off your imagination, then I'm going to disagree.
Sir, if a free will action is not a random action, then it's caused.
Random. It falls in the line of thinking randomness, but what it is when it comes to free will, it has to do with being a conscious agent, and randomness doesn't.
Sir,
have to do
in the
with being a
case
conscious
of a free will action, is your action caused or uncaused?
It is no.
cause
I
or
think
not
I'm disagreeing with what you're saying. What randomness is.
I'm
period.
asking you.
Well, your kind of argument relies on that question. You actually
because
do need to answer.
no,
that one.
you in randomness, A plus B equals.
Look, we don't want to hear your fucking math equations,
Right?
dude.
All right, no, this is how it works. In determinism, A plus B will always equal C.
Restating your premise won't help you in this situation.
Now,
You
I'm not
actually do
restating my
need to
premise.
answer
I'm
that
trying to
question.
explain. I'm
Answer
trying to
the
explain.
question. Answer
I'm
the
trying
question.
to explain. I'm trying to
Is it
explain why.
caused or uncaused? Is a free will action
Neither.
caused?
Neither.
Oh, there's a third option? There's a third option? What the fuck? Ha ha ha! Ha ha! There's a
Yes,
third
you
option.
dumb
What the
witch.
fuck are you talking about? You're an idiot.
You're a dumb bitch. Yes.
Look, it's either caused or not caused.
No,
That's
no,
what
no,
that
no, no.
matters.
He's really he's dug himself in a real hole because
I
now he's going to have
haven't
to.
dug-
No,
I'm
Fryan. No, Fryan. Listen, you're saying there's a third option, but you're saying that everything you believe is based on evidence. What's the evidence for this third option that you're espousing?
What
What's
is
my
the
third option? Can you,
first?
yeah, exactly. What is my third?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're asking you. This is your hypothesis.
You want to let me talk? You want to let me talk?
Your
You wanna let
turn.
me
Yeah,
talk, faggot?
please talk.
Calm down.
So here's the thing. So randomness.
No, please address the third option.
I'm doing that right now. Fuck face. Randomness is A plus B equals C, A, or B. That's randomness.
That is not the question she asked.
This is what I'm saying. The third option is.
Okay, here's the problem with that then. So if I run the equation,
what does
A
that
plus
mean?
B.
What does that mean?
No, no, wait,
What
no,
does that
no.
mean?
Okay,
What does
fine.
that
I'm
mean?
addressing
What does that mean?
I'm addressing that with you. Okay, I'm addressing with you. Okay, hold on.
Explain what it means.
I will. So
let him
no,
keep
you're
going.
not, because you didn't even let me finish. I
Yeah,
bet you don't
Orson,
even know what that
let
fucking
him keep
means.
going. I
I
want to
thought
see.
I thought I did let him finish.
No,
Just
you
be
didn't
quiet,
let me
Orson.
finish. You cut me off. You don't even know what it means. So you're gonna tell me.
Yeah,
you're
let's-
gonna fucking try to
all
counter it when
Look,
you don't even know what the
Fryan.
fuck it means.
Fryan, I've muted Orson. He's not going to interrupt you anymore. Okay, you can go ahead and continue your thing.
Okay, so and determinism is A plus B will always equal C, right? Now, the reason why A plus B in randomness will equal with anything within that pattern, and the outcome's never going to be the same with the inputs, is because everything's evenly weighted within the physical laws, right? The physical laws can be canceled
No,
out.
it doesn't have to
So
be
that
evenly weighted,
everything when it's not when everything's
No,
evenly
look,
weighted.
there can be factors that makes something more likely to occur, increase the probability of occurring, but it's still not the cause, right? Either something is caused or uncaused. Even if it's uncaused.
Okay, so you have variables, right? A plus B, right? Well, sometimes
There's only two options, caused or uncaused, whether there's factors that make it more likely and it's still uncaused or not.
No, that you still have variables because
What's the third option?
The third option is a mixture of the two because you still have variables, right?
No, there's no such thing.
Yes, there
No,
is.
it's a
We
dichotomy.
live-
No, look,
it's not.
there can
It's
be
not an economy.
factors. No,
It's a
sir,
false
you don't understand.
dichotomy.
Look,
It's a
even
false
if there's
dichotomy.
factors, even if there's factors that increase the likelihood of B occurring, it's still uncaused. It's still random.
Okay, so A plus B always equals C, right? In determinant. If you're a determinist, you're gonna fucking believe A plus B equals C. The cause of C is A and B. Those are the inputs, and the output is C. Now, randomness and determinism both exist, right, in this universe. And when I'm saying A plus B for randomness doesn't always equal C.
Look,
and
it doesn't matter. Look, it doesn't matter.
How that works.
Sir,
And how that works
it
is
doesn't
because
matter.
the physical laws
It
can
doesn't
cancel out
matter
and be
if
even
it
when they
doesn't
have
matter.
no input.
Listen, it doesn't matter if our universe is a combination of determined and random events. A single event cannot be a combination of both. A single event can only be one or the other.
I don't think you are addressing anything I'm saying.
How can an event be both caused? You're saying so it's a combination of cause and uncaused? You're an idiot.
I think that randomness exists, and so does order or determinism also exists, and right? And
That's fine. I'll accept that.
And what we
I'll
can
accept
see,
that
and
for the
what
sake
we
of
can
argument.
see,
That
and what
doesn't
we
mean
can
a
see how
single event.
randomness works.
That doesn't mean a single event can be both uncaused and caused at the same time. There can be factors that make it more likely to occur. That doesn't. It's still uncaused.
randomness,
If it's not determined, it's still uncaused.
We live in, we exist. The universe exists, so it follows these physical laws. You're not going to be able to get magic. Like for you to sit there and say randomness is something that doesn't have inputs, or it doesn't matter what the inputs are, it's going to magically make something that from something that was never inputted is bullshit.
What?
You're just mischaracterizing her argument as appeal to magic.
No, I don't know. I honestly, she's trying to say either you have cause or you don't have cause, and I'm disregarding that.
Do you think that free will reduces down to randomness?
Well, I think free will and randomness is the same.
Do you believe randomness is above
It's just
causality?
one applies to a conscious agent and one doesn't.
Because it definitely doesn't.
Yeah, I think that libertarian free will is
Don't you think godless that if free will reduces down to randomness, and I'm not objecting to that, but I'm saying that if it does, then don't you think that compatibilists are just, their position is just contradictory? Because wouldn't it just, compatibilist is the view that free will and determinism are compatible, but if free will is randomness, then the compatibilist thesis on your view would just be that randomness and determinism are compatible, but they seem to be completely incompatible. Do you see what I'm saying? So have you ever, like, if you think it reduces down to randomness, haven't you ever tried to run that up Josh's ass about how, wouldn't that just be a straightforward argument against compatibilism?
Josh is a compatibilist. He's insane. Compatibilists are bigger clowns than fucking libertarian free will fucks.
Yeah,
especially,
I tend to agree.
Especially Josh's. Yeah, fucking the Josh's version of compatibilism. No compatibilist even agrees with that fucking shit. It's garbage.
Yeah, but Josh doesn't want to say that. On Josh's view, want to say that free will reduces down to randomness, right? Because that would just fuck his position all up. So what have you talked to him? What does he say?
He says that the agent is responsible if the agent is out of accord with their intentions after deliberation.
I didn't want to bring responsibility into it because I think times what the compatibilists are doing is they're not saying that free will and determinism are compatible. They're saying something like moral responsibility and determinism are compatible.
No, he's not even. Josh isn't even saying
that's a
desert.
different thesis.
Josh isn't even arguing for desert.
Yeah, I know that. He has a more like a bit of a more narrow conception of moral responsibility that's like isn't really going to fit the full conception, I think. It's not going to track perfectly onto what everyone really means when they say moral responsibility.
Think of a philosophy conference about free will. You're going to have the libertarians, the hard determinists, the compatibilists, and then there's going to be the Bill Grommy broom closet, because the Bill Grommy fucks aren't talking about anything that anybody else, including the compatibilists, are talking about. They're just insane.
The Bill Grommy guys are focusing more on like stuff like agency and stuff like that. And I mean, and I think those are interesting questions. But I mean, ultimately, I'm more. Me and you are more interested in like the compatibility problem, whether or not you're compatible with this or not, and like having like a big robust notion of how agency ties into it. Might be nice to have, but it doesn't really. I mean, unless they somehow think that answers the problem of whether or not they're compatible or not. I don't know.
I don't think. I think the problem with Godless is she believes that her abstract idea of how free will works in the universe is not with the physical world. I think it's too imaginative, and I think she doesn't understand that. And I think
Fryan thinks that a single
that
event
free
can
will
be both.
exists outside.
Fryan thinks that a single event can be both caused and uncaused at the same time.
Yeah, and I was trying to explain it to you, but you kept on cutting me off before I even got to make one point.
Yeah, I was trying to explain to him, look, there can be factors in an uncaused event that make that event more likely, can increase the probability that it's more likely to occur. If you rewind the clock, it's going to
You cannot get an outcome.
It's still uncaused. It's still a dichotomy. It's either caused or uncaused. Whether it's uncaused with factors that make it more likely or not. It's uncaused or caused. It's just gibberish.
What's interesting is
that it's a combination of the two.
Energy cannot be transferred. Energy cannot be energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. The very fact that you think, the very fact that you can get the very fact that you can get a different variable to get an outcome that's not within that structure is insane. It's not magic. There's no such thing as magic.
Red herring. Look, this
That's
is just
not a red herring.
Red
This is
herring.
what
But
you're
by the
implying.
way,
That's
the
what you're
shit
implying
that
for
you
will
just spewed out of your fucking mouth. By the way, the red herring shit that you just spewed out of your mouth is assuming that we're in a closed system rather than an open system, our universe. So I don't know how the fuck you figured that out.
Yes.
It's completely irrelevant to everything we're talking about.
Irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, existence is relevant into how we define.
I don't even know how you're supposed to apply that to your argument. You lost me.
I mean, one interesting thing about the whole randomness is that we don't just think. It's not just that we think that like randomness and like free will or randomness and moral responsibility are incompatible, because I think that it all depends where the randomness happens in the causal chain. Like if the randomness happens after our if it happens after our intentions and after our desires and after our like, then we still think that people are morally responsible. But if the randomness happens before that in the causal chain, then we think there's like a problem. Like for example, think about like this. Like I'll show you like an example of how randomness, if you place it later in the causal chain, everyone still thinks that people are morally responsible. Like think about like if I wanted to kill this person, right? And I decided that the best time to kill them would be on a certain route on their way home. But I drew a contingency plan and thought that if I didn't get a clear shot and they were going to escape, the only place they would escape was like into this large apartment complex, right? And let's say that I then decide to rig the apartment complex with explosives. But let's say that I only have enough explosives to rig like a third of the apartment complex, right? And let's say like I have no idea which room he's going to be likely to hide in. I think that all rooms are going to be equally as likely for him to hide in. So that I take some type of quantum computer, right, and get that computer to randomly select a third of those rooms, and then I go in and I wire those rooms that were selected randomly with the explosive. let's say he runs into the, I missed the shot, he runs into the building, and then I blow
Gets
up.
blown to
I
smithereens.
hit the bomb, right? And then a third of the rooms get blown up, right? Let's say that he just so happens to be in one of those rooms that I rigged up, right? Well, it was there was randomness in the, it was random whether or not the room that he was in was one that was rigged with explosives or whatever like that. But we wouldn't say that on account of that I'm not morally responsible. Why? Because I had already made the decision to kill him. I had the intention, the desire to kill him. I had thought of reasons, and I went through that process and done it. And then when it happens, even though it happens randomly, we still think that intuitively I'm morally responsible, right? No one thinks that I wouldn't be morally responsible just because I was lucky enough or random enough to blow up the third that he was in. Everyone's like, no, you meant to kill him, you intended to kill him, and you did kill him. You're morally responsible, regardless if you got lucky in that attempt. If I shoot a shot in the air of a gun and it's a really far away and I just get lucky enough to hit you, as long as I wanted to kill you, as long as I intended to kill you, just because I hit you with the lucky shot of the gun doesn't absolve me of my moral responsibility. So
hold on. I think you misunderstand her
itself
randomness.
isn't incompatible with moral responsibility. But if you
Her
take the
randomness
randomness and you
superpowers and
place it in front of my desires and intentions, like the randomness, something random caused my intentions or desires, now we have a problem. And so there's I think that randomness isn't itself incompatible. It has to do with where randomness exists in the causal chain and stuff like that. And I think that should probably be something we could talk about or focus or something.
Well, I think the idea that randomness, I think people are confused. This abstract thought that randomness is magic. Like there's no it doesn't matter on the variables. It's going to create something regardless of the variables, or an output is going to be. No, randomness is within the confounds. It's just what it is. What we make one more weighted on one side, where the outcome would be that won't exist, and that happens in the universe. It happens on a quantum level, and it also happens on a macro level as well. Sometimes there's just shit where there's no discernible outcome, so it's just going to be random what the outcome is. But it's not going to be magic or something that comes out of nothing. That's not randomness. And I think people have to realize that we live in a universe that exists, so everything operates within existence in the physical laws.
Yeah. Yep.
Now apply that to free will, please.
Lock Trump up. Put him in jail. Cheeto man, get him out of our country. Woo!
Shut up, retard.
All right, I regret everything.
I know you do. But it's okay because it's not your fault. You didn't get to choose because you don't believe in free will.
I still don't agree with your definition of free will. I don't know how you applied everything you just said to free will.
Okay, so if you break it down to what, because I'm taking that the universe exists. Do you agree that the universe exists? Like physical laws exist?
Yeah.
Do you agree? I don't believe there's anything outside of existence.
Okay.
Do you believe there's something other than existence?
There's no demonstrable evidence.
Okay, and so I'm going off that we exist, the universe exists, and these physical laws are everything, right? And whatever physical laws we don't quite understand, haven't discovered, right? Whatever. But like randomness and free will exists within this existence, right?
Okay.
So we cannot sit there and say randomness is out of nothing or out of a certain variables you get something that's completely out of left field. That's not those variables. You can never recreate out of those variables. No, it has to be confined. Like we have evidence that randomness does exist. That sometimes when all the physical laws cancel each other out in certain ways, that the outcome is either going to be A, B, or C. Right? It's never going to be. It's never going to be one way. And there's no way you can determine what's the outcome because everything's evenly weighed against each other. And that's randomness in an existence in our universe.
Tasteless. You need to talk to Tasteless like really bad.
That's true. Tasteless would clear this up.
Yeah, I'm good. But that's all I'm trying to say is like the idea of randomness and free will as an abstract thought of outside of existence is I disregard. It's like saying we can't have free will because we exist. because like we can
What
never.
the fuck are
never
you
have
talking
control.
about, man?
I don't understand how you're like applying randomness to free will. Can you actually define?
Oh,
Like,
because the principle is somewhat the same when it comes to randomness and free will.
okay, well,
'Cause-
define what you mean by free will then. What do you
Okay,
think?
free will has to do with like with choice, right? We can actively choose on what the outcome is going to be. But like with randomness, there's no conscious agent of what the outcome will be. And randomness is just like sometimes in certain ways, the outcome is never going to be A plus B equals C.
All right, let me just ask you, why does someone choose A over B?
The preference, they can reject A and B altogether. Like there's a lot of choices in what someone can do. Like you can reject data, or you can sit there.
Look, listen to what I'm saying, all right? Listen, I give you a choice between an apple and an orange.
And I walk away.
Let's just say that you pick one, you pick the apple. Why did you pick A over B? Why did you pick the apple?
Maybe I never had an apple before and I wanted to eat it. Maybe apple.
That's not random.
Over an orange.
This guy's the same one who fucking plays rock paper
That's free-
scissors
that's
and
choice.
uses gun like a fucking idiot.
That's free will. Like there's so many the idea.
Yeah, it's not free will. You just gave a reason, right?
I gave a reason based off of what? A reason based off of what? Based off my contemplation, not based off of inputs.
You're talking about it. That is based on input.
Consciousness is me contemplating the variables on what I want to do with that data. I can reject the data. I can decide to do something else every now. But there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to make it where I have to accept the outcome that you want me to accept.
Is your contemplation not based on input?
Well, your contemplation, so the way it works is like you have data, right? Which is the external, the physical world, right?
Look, it's a
And then
yes or no question.
Your body, no, it's not a yes or no question. Your body it takes that
Well,
data
it
and depending on how your genetics are, you're going to interpret that data a certain way, and it's going to be on certain types of data is going to be gathered.
It sounds like you're
Based off
saying
the
yes.
data, based off that data, you're going to choose, and that's what you're through it. Based off that how that data is
Okay, so the
presented to
answer
you, you're
is
going to
yes.
choose. No,
Yeah,
no,
so you think when we
and then,
say
well, you can reject the information as well, though. That's what you don't understand. So it's not yet.
well, you're actually just you're basically subscribing to the tasteless argument for free will.
I'm not. I don't want tasteless.
Listen, you don't even know what that fucking is, so shut up.
I
and
don't
I'll
know
tell
what
you.
it is, and
Just
I'm
shut
gonna
the fuck
reject
up.
it based
Listen,
off
just
if you
stop.
can't prove that it is.
Listen. You're subscribing to the tasteless argument for free will. When I ask him, how do you know that why does an agent choose A over B? And then in tasteless says, we know they have a choice because they choose.
Okay, so I didn't just make a claim. There's a difference. And the fact is, my definition of free will is no matter what the variables are, it's not always going to be the same. I can decide what I want to do with the data that is presented to me. And that's free will. Like when it comes to determinism, you don't decide what to do with the data. It just always equals this.
Yeah, what you're describing is consistent with determinism.
No, what I'm describing is not consistent with determinism, because determinism says A plus B equals C. But we can see with free will that A plus B equals whatever it is. And we can literally, with free will, we can prove that free will exists because we can decide to reject the variables and not use them, not use that data. We can decide to look at weigh our options on like in that little box, or we even have a third option. We can even think of a way to create another option.
Look, we're just
by adding
the
another
question
variable.
is how do you know that
That's
you're
free will.
choosing? The question is how do you know that you're choosing? And you're basically just saying because we choose. But what
Well,
we're talking
this
about
this
is what
how we
makes
know.
what we're asking you is what we're asking you is what makes these choices like some independent of outside antecedent causes.
Well, you can't make a choice on something you don't know exists, right? Do you agree with
I
that?
don't fucking understand.
Like
what
what I'm
that
saying,
has-
like the data is coming into you, right? You can't make a choice. Like if I gave you 3 folders, right, and you're like the president or something, I'm like, this is all the information you need on the subject, and you have to make a decision on what option you have with these 3 folders. But there was a 4th option that I left out on accident or on purpose. And then you make your decision, but you couldn't make a decision on the 4th folder because it wasn't in front of you. You don't have, even though that 4th folder existed, you couldn't make a decision. You couldn't use that information in there. You couldn't make it where you use a combination of the 4, or you would have chose 4. You couldn't do that because you didn't have access to that data.
Know what this has to do with anything.
And what it has to do with
you
the fact that
definitely couldn't make a choice.
the fact is that the data that is presented to you through your genetics, the data is the external world, is only presented to you. It's only presented to you. It's not dictating what you're going to do with the outcome. It's only presented, and you decide what you're going to do with the data. No, it doesn't, because determinism, there's no decision making. It's
Look,
literally
you're just assuming that your introspection about having made a decision in a way that you're saying is reliable, right?
Well, no, I'm not assuming that. I just haven't got to the other part where I can show you.
You're saying that you're making.
No, I'm always been trying to
would
explain.
Describe, right? You're saying that you're making a choice.
How it works.
You're saying that you experience what was a choice for you, right? Therefore, free will.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that we have evidence of randomness and we have evidence of free will. And the evidence of free will, the physical evidence of free will, is the fact that we can create things. We can create fictional stories. We can create things that other people can interact with.
All those are
in the physical
consistent
world.
with determinism, so those aren't evidence for free
It
will.
wouldn't be consistent with determinism, because determinism would not allow you to make things that didn't exist in the physical world.
What are you talking about? Why? No, it's totally false.
No, that's not totally false. You would not be able to create a world that is outside that works on like a video game that other people can play that has totally different physical laws in this world. You wouldn't be able to do that if it was determined.
Let me ask something really quick.
What are you talking about?
You cannot create a virtual world if you didn't have free will.
Physicist who claimed that just because randomness exists, therefore free will.
I'm not.
And we went over why that's ridiculous.
I gave more information than just that. By the way,
so basically, all this guy is doing is saying if randomness exists,
I didn't say
then
that.
the entailment of that is free will, which is
I gave multiple.
Well, nothing is
reasons
random.
why evidence of free will. And
we
free
have
will is
causality.
like the fact that we can.
You got to slow down really quick. You got to slow it down, man.
The fact that we can make video games in virtual worlds that are totally not based on reality. The fact that we can make this is evidence of free will, and that other people can interact with.
The fact that we
Yes, it
can
is.
think that we have free will is evidence
That-
for free will.
That's not what I said at all. It's a straw man.
Well,
I'm not saying
Well,
that
no,
we have
it's
evidence.
It's what your argument sounds like.
I said my evidence is the fact that we are able to create things that do not exist in the physical world.
I'm not
on our
asking
own.
that. What I'm asking is, could you give me demonstrable evidence that there is no cause that's making me make the choices?
You want me to say negative? Really? That's
not a negative
positive
claim.
on you. That is a negative claim, bro.
No, that definitely
I'm
isn't.
saying negative. I'm saying negatively. That's not what it is because there's no evidence of that.
Okay,
And you're just trying to say, well, can you show me that there's no evidence of that?
No, what you're saying is, right, you're pointing out the fact that there's no evidence to suggest that we are. Well, let me think about how.
Yeah, go ahead and reword your
Hey,
fucking negative fucking plan.
Hey, Fry.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, what's going
on? Do you think you could use your free will right now to not understand the English language?
No, I cannot.
Well, but
isn't
isn't that like a red flag though? I mean,
No,
if
I
you
choose
don't even
what
have the free will to not understand the words coming out of my mouth,
No, I choose.
then what kind of free will are you talking about?
I choose how. I choose what I want to do with the data.
Okay,
that's just begging the question, though. You understand?
How is me choosing?
All right. So what do you mean whenever you say I change the data?
I didn't say
What does
I
the
changed,
word
I
change
choose.
mean?
I didn't say change. I said choose.
Well, choose is.
All right. So you're just invoking the ability to choose otherwise?
No. We have evidence that free will is possible with randomness.
All
We
right.
also
So
have
the
evidence
answer
of
was
free will
no.
creation.
You said no.
No.
Right. So
I
you're
was
not
saying no to your
invoking
whole.
the
I was
ability to
saying
choose
no to your whole thing. I wasn't saying no.
All
to
right.
your
So
question.
you don't believe that we have choices?
No, we do have choices, because if we didn't have choices, we wouldn't have free will.
And the whole, like, I understand, I sympathize with your view because a lot of these physicists are pretty stupid, and they just say that just because randomness exists, then what is a direct entailment of that is free will, which isn't true, because our biology can still be determined, right? Like, we can acknowledge that determinism, we don't have to invoke determinism on a cosmic scale. We can just invoke determinism on a biological scale, right? So with that being said, if we can still acknowledge we're not in control of our biology, then you're not getting the free will you want.
Well, I say no, because I don't think it works that way. Matter of fact, I know it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because how it
you
works.
have to say something like, "I think I'm in control of my biological makeup."
No, I don't.
So you
and I'll
don't.
tell you why.
Yeah. So you don't think you're in control of your desires and tendencies.
No, I don't think it. I think you're in a box, like, of nature versus nurture, right? And I think that's how you're thinking, and this is why you're wrong. You got to get out of the box.
All right, so just make it clear to the people you're arguing with that you're not arguing for the ability to choose otherwise.
No, what I'm saying is, yeah, your genetics is going to determine what kind of data you can gather and how that data is going to be perceived. But that data is only presented to you in your consciousness to contemplate on it, and you decide what you're going to do with that data or not. And what's going to come up.
But that's not a really good way of, because like I said, you're just bordering into invoking the ability to choose otherwise. Because you're saying things like,
That's free will.
I interpret the data and I choose things.
Yeah, that's free will, right? Like, if you think free will exists is anything other than existence, like it's some kind of magical force that exists outside the physical laws, you're insane.
Experiment that's really cookie cutter. Like, let's say that we go back in time 10 minutes and then replay this conversation, but I erase your memory. Do you think that you would have the ability to say anything else other than what you've said?
Yeah, it really depends. Like, if,
the issue is that whenever you say
like,
yes,
what I decide,
then
right?
once again you are invoking the ability to choose otherwise.
And you're invoking that you have the ability to go back in time to do that.
Well, it's just a thought experiment, right?
Well, you can sit there and hide behind the thought experiment, but that's what you're saying. Because as just a thought experiment doesn't mean
what
it's going to
you're
happen.
saying is conceptually you're wrong?
No, I'm not.
So what's your issue with thought experiments?
My issue with thought experiments is that it's an example of something that exists outside of existence. And in free will, randomness, everything exists within existence.
Do you think that your thoughts exist outside of existence?
I didn't say that. I say everything exists within existence. Your thought experiment disproves free will, that you have the ability to think of things that are not physically possible.
So do you think that my thoughts are part of the
variable
physical world?
that exists. There's no variable that exists to make you think of something that isn't physical possible.
What if I said that thoughts are abstract?
Say again.
Now just ask my question, John.
I mean, are we really gonna keep going to the presupposition argument every time someone?
I haven't presupped anything.
I'm talking about the guy who
What
just
have I
popped in.
presupped?
The guy who just popped in.
Where are you generating these predictions that determinism should say that we can't have imagination? Where are you getting that from?
Well,
His imagination.
Well, the reason why we couldn't have imagination is because determinism is A plus B equals C. There's no reason for you to be able to have anything else. Because if A plus B equals C and everything's like that,
So
it's just
why couldn't some of those lead to imaginative thought experiments and video games and paintings and music? I don't understand why you're precluding all that on the basis of determinism. That just seems really arbitrary, right? You're kind of defining determinism in a way that it's ensured to be false.
No, because determinism doesn't have choice. Determinism, there is no such thing as choice in A plus B equals C.
What does that have to do with imagination? Right?
You can't choose what to think about. You can only choose.
Why can't we be determined to imagine these things and be determined to make video games?
Because determinism is A plus B equals C, and you.
So what? What does it have to do with video games?
What you only can do what you're given. You cannot think of anything else. You can't even build upon it. You can only do what is given to you. You
Not
can't
really.
think of anything else.
You're
That's
not really
determinism.
explaining. You're not really explaining why. You're stopping just short. You're stopping
Because
just
I'm
short.
telling you
Of,
determinism. Determinism A plus B equals C. And the very fact that determinism A plus B equals C, you can never think of anything else but C.
so you're really making a comment about the nature of minds, right? About kind of like you're limiting minds in a way, right? The fact that we have minds that can think of thoughts, right? You're saying that.
You're limiting minds.
Right. So you're saying there's like a limit to our imagination, and that what's the defining line in terms of what's the defining line in our imagination about what we could or could not think about?
I never said there was a limit.
True or false?
I never said there was a limit, bro. I said that.
Well, then how are you?
That's contradictory to your previous argument that because
he
we can
literally-
create video games with different physics or whatever than the real world, that means determinism is false.
Our consciousness is pure free will, but like what we can bring into the physical world has to be within the existence.
Okay, so you don't have.
Well, what if I just deny that? Like, how is that? How does that? How does that follow on determinism?
I'm not a determinist.
Well, you're saying that because of those. Well, you don't have to be a determinist. Look, you're making an argument that
I'm not making a deterministic
what's brought
argument.
into reality has to exist in reality under determinism or some shit. You're saying
No,
that,
it doesn't. No, it doesn't have to. Because randomness exists in reality, in the physical world, but everything has to exist within existence. There's no such thing as magic, bro. You're not going to get something from nothing.
It doesn't seem like you have a stable criteria for like.
I think it is very stable. I just think that you're confusing. You believe that determinism is something more than what it is.
You're just arguing from intuition.
I'm not arguing from intuition. I'm arguing from common sense.
All that's in video games is the amalgamation and collection of various ideas put together, that are conceptualized. All it is just like, what if Alien have laser gun or whatever, have a gun that shoots light.
If we live in a determinist world and everything's determinate, how would someone be able to think something other than the output of the variables? Tell me, how would someone come to a different decision other than the output of the variables?
They wouldn't.
Exactly. And there's a lot of evidence that we are making things that are not in the physical world.
So how are video games something other than the output of the variables? If the variable
there's nothing
the imagination.
Because there's nothing in the physical world. There's nothing. Well, the imagination is separate from the physical world, which is you're trying to say determinism. So, the physical world, the imagination or the physical world, there's nothing in it that dictates we will be able to create these new things that don't exist. If it was pure determinism, we would never build or think of anything other than what the outcome was.
You're just making assertions. You're just saying that.
I'm not making an assertion. That's how
yes,
it is.
You
That's
are.
determinism.
Look, your assertion. I'll repeat your assertion
determinism.
to you. I'll repeat your assertion to you.
Okay,
There's
go ahead
nothing in
and
the
repeat
physical
your lame
world.
brain.
Hello? There's nothing in the
Yeah, go
physical
ahead.
world that would dictate that we can create things other than things that exist. That was your
Yes.
assertion.
Yeah.
So you are making assertions.
I guess I am making an assertion on that. But tell me, how is that wrong? Tell me how that's wrong. Come on.
Well, yeah. Look, you're legit.
No. This is how it works. Your argument is a permanent argument. And so therefore, only thing that can A plus B equals C. A and B are the variables, right? A and B are the variables. Right? No. A and B are the variables, right? So explain to me how something other than the physical world, the variables, will get a different output. Explain to me.
Why do you think that algebra can help you right now?
Look,
A plus B is an algebra
attacking a straw man.
I'm not attacking a straw man. You're saying determinism is real, and you're saying that underneath the deterministic values, you wouldn't get C. You would get something other than C in determinism.
No, I'm not saying that. Look, this is why it's a straw man. Because
that's what I'm saying. No, this is exactly what I'm saying, and you just said I was wrong. So what the fuck are you saying, bro? If you're saying I'm wrong when I'm saying that, what the hell are you saying?
Listen,
if you're saying I'm wrong when I'm saying that, what is he saying?
He can't respond.
Look,
if you're just gonna spurg out.
Yeah. So.
Oh no! It just he said I was wrong, and I was
just
saying that.
calm down and let him respond.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to you, but okay.
What
So
are you
you're
saying,
saying, okay, you're saying that based on, I don't know, imagination or creativity or something of video games, that determinism is false because A plus B can't equal anything other than C on determinism. And I'm saying that doesn't follow, that makes no sense at all.
Okay, why
And
do you
then
say
you're
it makes
saying
no sense
prove
and it
me
doesn't follow?
wrong, but that's
No, no,
shifting
no,
the
no.
burden.
Okay, okay. When you say that doesn't follow, that doesn't make sense at all. That's not a negative claim, bro. You do know that, right?
It doesn't follow. That's
Okay, if
correct.
it doesn't follow, explain why it doesn't follow. Why doesn't that follow?
Right. So the logic, I just explained the logic that you used to get to that
No, you
conclusion.
didn't. No, you didn't.
Your logic is on determinism, A plus B equals C. Video games have something other than exists in reality. Therefore, A plus B does not equal C in the video games. But that doesn't make sense at all because that's just a total non sequitur. There's no A plus B
I think you're
B
just showing non
in
sequitur.
video game physics or video game fucking lore or whatever the fuck. Like
Okay,
the dude
so
who created Halo
and that's what.
didn't fucking think in a way that A plus B equals B or some shit. His
Okay,
imagination
he
and his
doesn't.
thought
And
process
it doesn't have to,
followed
but that's
determinism.
but that's determinism. That's how determinisms work. You get these variables, and the
No.
outcome is this. So you're saying determinism is random in its outcome.
No.
Then what are you saying then?
I'm
'Cause
saying
A plus
that
B equals C is determinism. That's not
I'm
random.
saying that whatever example you're talking about with like video games or like, you know, let's just say the dude that made Halo or something, like putting a dude in a robot suit wasn't him creating anything that wasn't him creating anything more that didn't exist as much as it was him combining ideas of someone being covered in armor and then
Where did we
infusing
get
the
to the point
armor
where
with AI technology or like computer
where did
technology.
we get to the point? If it was deterministic, right? Where did we get to the point where we can even think about these?
Yeah, so
If
he took
everything is A plus
idea
B equals
A,
C,
a dude covered in
what was it?
armor,
But where
and
did
then he
idea A come from? See, you're talking about these
medieval
abstract
times,
thoughts.
or like when
Okay,
people
so
started putting armor.
you're talking about these abstract thoughts. If it's like in deterministic, I don't know, medieval times would never have taken place. If it were determinism, everything that A plus B, and there was no idea of free will, and it was all deterministic, no one would be able to change the outcome. No, the outcome will always be the same.
Yes.
And that means we will never be able to have medieval time. We will never be able to have video games because all those are things. All
How
those,
does that
hold on,
follow?
all those things are creations outside of fucking determinism.
Yeah, defend that. What's the argument?
Okay, the argument is this, and I just told you the argument is this: A plus B equals fucking C, bro. You do not understand
That's
how
not an
determinism
argument.
works. That is an argument because that's
not an
determinism.
argument.
That is determinism. Because what,
You know what
you're
an
having,
argument is?
You're just making an
I do know an
assertion.
argument. I do know. I'm not making an assertion.
What is an argument?
You disagree. You
You said
disagree
if
that
determinism was false, that the medieval ages wouldn't have happened. That's an assertion. Now
No, I
ask
said
what the defense for that
true.
was.
Hold on. If determinism was true, then
Even
medieval
did it takes us
Okay,
out.
medieval
You
age
hear
would
that?
never have happened.
Okay, fine. If determinism was true, we wouldn't have had the Middle Ages.
We wouldn't
And
have
that was
any
your
type of
assertion.
physical creation.
That
We
was
wouldn't
your
have any type
assertion.
of physical creation. We wouldn't have any type of physical creation of man-made concepts or designs.
Okay, so a
If it
dude
was-
wouldn't
if
have
that was true.
rubbed two sticks together and made a fire if determinism was true.
Why would he? Why would he? Why would
Because he was
someone rub two
determined
sticks together?
to.
Determined to do what?
To rub the
Why
sticks
didn't-
together to make the fire.
Why didn't every man rub sticks together?
Why didn't
You could,
every
you could
man?
use
Because they weren't.
materialism.
Because some were determined to, and some weren't determined to.
You could use
so-
materialism here to
Here's
explain
the thing. There's an evolution. There's in evolution. There has been certain groups. Have you ever read Darwin, the tribe's name? They didn't need fire. They literally adapted to the evolution. They evolved to adapt to their environment where it was negative fucking 20 degrees and babies were walking around naked, and people were walking around naked. So why would they have to? Well, here's the point. Here's the point. What made it where these people evolved to take those conditions as like it was nothing, while most people would just freeze to death in those conditions. And what made it where someone created the ability to rub two sticks together and create a fire versus dying and evolving to take those conditions.
The antecedent causes.
He's like comparing possible worlds. It's weird.
I'm not
I mean,
comparing
sorry, the
possible worlds.
precedent
These are all
causes.
things that are existent. I'm comparing things that exist. He's comparing abstract ideas into the physical world. I'm talking about real shit. He's not.
Great argument.
I'm talking about real
I'm
physical
convinced.
existence. He's talking about abstract imaginations. He's talking about an imaginative idea. So my imagination says that free will doesn't exist, but no physical evidence for it.
That this is an argument.
No. Here's the point. It is so bizarre that you believe that the evidence for free will is the fact that we can do something other than the variables would dictate what the outcome would be.
Look,
that's the evidence in free will. Because if it was just deterministic, we would never ever get past C.
In what sense are you talking about outcome, input and output variables? Like, do you mean in a physical sense, like
yeah, in a physical sense,
antecedent subsequent causes, or like are you talking about mental variables of like?
I'm talking about physical sense, like the physical sense of determinism.
Yeah, true. Go ahead, Mike.
Because that you can
God,
never
don't
have.
dump this guy off on me.
All right.
Well, you said you figured the problem out.
Oh, it was a joke, but I think it's inappropriate.
Oh, okay.
Tell me.
Like every time I come in here, I know y'all get off on like being African, but I think you're just Marxist. No, you're the only one stupid. You literally believe that things can happen other than the outcome that the variables dictate.
No, I don't.
But there's no such thing as free will. Yes, you do.
Just what variables? What variables are you talking about? Can you be
physical fucking variables, bro? What the fuck is that?
You give an example rather than just saying A plus B equals C.
Okay.
No,
Legos. If you attach A is this piece, B is this piece, and you put
That's
these
not
pieces
helping at
together,
all.
it equals this outcome.
That's not any better.
Well, if you use the same Lego pieces, yeah, you can predict the outcome every time.
Yeah.
If
well,
you
that's determinism.
Yeah, so why don't you think determinism is possible? That's an example of it. That's evidence for determinism.
I never said determinism is not possible. I'm saying that determinism exists, but so does free will.
Well, Jesus, they're not. That's a dichotomy. They're mutually exclusive.
No, they're not. They're not mutually exclusive.
So you're a compatibilist.
How do you define free will, Fryan?
Free will?
Define free will.
A plus B equals C.
No.
B
Using
and A.
words now. Use your big boy words and define
I did
free
use
will.
words. I just did.
No, you used
A, B, and C words.
Free will doesn't mean it has the outcome that the variables dictate. There's nothing that dictates the outcome. The outcome is not dictated. That's free will.
Okay, I didn't get that. Say that again.
The outcome is not dictated.
So it's random.
Random within existence, right? So our choices is the outcome. So like what we choose overall with what the data looks, what we choose to do with the data, how to use the data, whatever, is proof of free will.
That's begging the question.
How's that begging the question?
You're including choice when what we're examining here is choice itself.
No, what we're examining here is, so we're examining the physical world, and we're examining the body, and we're examining the conscious, the phenomenon of thinking, right? Do you not observe a phenomenon of thinking?
I have qualia, and I think, and I experience thinking, but I don't experience your thinking.
Are you observing it though?
Not your thinking. Clearly, no. Clearly, no. I'm not observing your thinking.
Personal thought, your personal thing. So you agree that thinking exists, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So now we have the physical world. Do you agree the physical world exists?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe you can use the physical world to determine what is true and what is false?
I think we can. I mean, with some certainty, no. I'm an epistemic pessimist, but I think that we use the external world to verify certain propositions. I don't see where you're going, but keep going. This is fun.
Do you believe that if I imagine I can fly, and I'm gonna go and jump in the can and fly away and not fall, do you believe my consciousness or my imagination will say to the physical world that you're not real and I will keep flying, or you believe I'm just going to fall into the Grand Canyon?
I don't think that your thoughts can control the physical world. I'm not a transcendental idealist.
Okay, so the idea of what free will is has to fit within existence, and the existence is the physical, right? Our consciousness is born from our physical bodies, our structure, vice versa. But my argument is variable. There is evidence of randomness, but there's also evidence of free will. And if it was just deterministic and it was just input and output, right?
Wait, we can't just gloss over that, Fryan. What is the evidence for free will?
Oh, the evidence is the type of things we create. And the reason why this is evidence, the type of things we create that don't exist without us, right? Like the structures we make, the video games, that would not exist without us. Like if we didn't exist,
hang on just a
that wouldn't
second.
exist.
Hang on just a second. Let me stop you right there because I need to ask you a clarifying
All right, so you're
question.
saying it would exist, huh? You saying video games without humans?
No, I was going to ask you a question, but calm down. Listen. So the idea is that you're saying that the state of affairs, right? That video games were created by us, right? That we caused video games to come into existence. That is inconsistent with determinism, a deterministic universe. What's the argument for that?
Well, I'm saying that's evidence of free will. That's one.
No. Why is it evidence of free will? Why are video games what we would necessarily expect given that free will were true?
Because if it was deterministic, we would never be able to see. I think thinking is evidence of free will, by the way. But like if it was just deterministic, we would never be able to do more than the output of the variables.
I understand you think that. I'm just.
I don't think that. I think that's how it is. I think A plus B.
I'm just looking for an argument.
That's the argument. That's the argument. A plus B equals C, right?
No, that's a claim.
So you're saying if I gave you a Lego set and tell you to build the pilot set and you follow the instructions, that magically, if you follow the instructions and you did A plus B all the way to the end, you wouldn't have a Lego pirate ship?
Sure, but what's determining the product of the outcome?
Those are actually expensive.
What's determining the product of the outcome is the variables going in. Like you have this.
Okay, and what determines the variables?
The physical existence.
Okay, so it is compatible with a determinist universe.
I said determinism and free will exist. Yes.
No, but if the variables themselves are determined, right? Then there is no free will because something is either determined or it's random.
No, your narrative run. These things exist. So you have data that is true. These things exist. Your narrative on how you interpret the data is flawed. So what you have is
Your mic is really low, bud.
All right, what you have is you have a variable of the variable coming in A plus B equals C. But here's the thing with free will. When I get that data of A plus B and all the different variables, it's my genetics determine how it's gathered and how it's perceived, right? But I decide on what I'm going to do with the data. And if I'm going to nitpick the data, if I'm going to disregard all the data, if I'm going to use some of it. And I also decide necessarily, I can see logically that this data leads to here if I do this. But I can also think of a new way to combine data or think of a new idea to have a different outcome in thought.
Let me ask you this. This might clarify something. Do you think that there is something about the agent, something about you, other than your genetics, that is deliberating about what to do? Or are you merely genetics?
No,
Are you merely
I believe
physical?
I believe my consciousness is born from genetics, and there's some kind of physical law when it comes to consciousness that is universal. But I think you have to have structure to have consciousness.
Let me ask you this. Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Listen. If genetics determine your brain, right? Your physical
genetics determines how things work and how
things. Hang on just a second. I'm not done. Hang on. If your genetics determine your brain, that is the mechanism that does the thinking, right? And your thinking is what is how you deliberate about those variables. And you've already conceded that your genetics are something that's determined. What's the substance that gives you freedom of choice if the variables causing the deliberation are determined?
The substance that gives us a choice is the ability to decide the output. That's not begging the question.
Yes, it absolutely is.
No,
it
it's not
absolutely
begging the
is
question.
begging the question,
And
Fryan.
I'll tell you why it's not begging the question. Well, okay, actually, before I tell you why it's not begging, explain to everyone. Don't just invoke begging the question. Explain how this is circular reasoning. Because I'm not using consciousness. Hold on.
Look,
I'm not using consciousness by itself. So I want you to understand that.
Okay, so what is up for examination here is the rational agent's ability to choose. And when I ask you how that agent chooses, you're appealing to the agent's choice. That is a textbook definition of begging the question.
So that's a bold-faced lie, and I'll tell you why. The reason why that's a bold-faced lie is because we have physical evidence of the creation. If it was determined, I want you to explain to everyone.
Of the what?
Hold on. I want you to explain to everyone. How is it, if it was deterministic input-output, how would you get an output, right? That doesn't exist in the physical world. And all the things that we create, all the stories, the language, all those things that we have done wouldn't exist if it was just determinism. So I want you to explain, how can you make the leap from input-output, right, to the idea?
Okay.
To the idea, if we're just slaves to
just
if we're just
I got the question.
No, you didn't. If we're just slaves to input-output, if we're just slaves to input-output, how are we able to build something more than the output if we're just slaves to the input-output?
Yeah, I got the question the first time you asked. The first of the 4 times that you repeated.
How do you?
So, okay,
You're
now
asking it again. Shut up.
Shut the fuck up, Fryan. So how do we get a product, right? If there's how do you ever get a product given a certain amount of variables? I don't understand how that question is a threat to determinism. Can you explain?
How is brainstorming not a threat to?
Because anything that your brain does can be determined. It's consistent with determinism, Fryan.
So when someone created a new language, or say created a picture that doesn't exist, hold on. When someone creates a new language,
He's like tasteless.
Hold on. How is someone able to create?
That's your new quote there, Catch.
How does someone?
Somebody quote that in the main chat.
How does someone create something that doesn't exist? Because if it's something is created that doesn't exist, that means there was no input.
It exists in their imagination.
If it exists in imagination, like, that's the thing. If it exists in their imagination, that means
it began to exist.
If it exists in the imagination, it means that it's free will.
Not at all.
Yeah, it does, because there's no variable. Your claim is that there's a variable for every output, and there's an output that can be related to the various variables. But I want you to prove that something that doesn't exist in the physical world, how it can be created when it doesn't exist in the physical world to begin with.
Because somebody puts two ideas together and creates the new thing.
Okay, but you're basing it off ideas. That's circular reasoning, because you're basing it off a conscious agent. Now, if the fact is that you're basing it off a conscious agent, should tell you that there's a reason why conscious agents have free will and a rock doesn't.
No, we're talking about thoughts here. We're talking about free will. You're saying how does one thought get created independent of free will existing? And all I'm saying is that someone combines ideas together.
Someone combines ideas together. Okay, so that's circular reasoning.
A new thought is formed when previous thoughts are put together.
From someone else's free will. It's like you're
no, because it can be determined. That's
no.
That is absolutely
we have evidence.
Determinism.
You're doing the false cause fallacy. You're doing the false cause fallacy. We have evidence that randomness exists. We also have evidence that free will exists, because we have things that we have created, and we have things that we have shared verbally and communication-wise within our imagination that we all interact with, right? that doesn't exist in the physical world that actually goes against the physical world. If it was just A plus B equals C, there would be nothing we can do to go against the physical world or make something that didn't exist in the physical world.
Chum, the note I have under this guy's name is A plus B equals C.
Perfect.
It's pretty sure that you're axiomatically claiming that.
Yeah, he's just
that creativity means there is certainly free will.
Yeah, all he's saying is that
Creativity is evidence of free will.
creativity implies A plus B doesn't equal C, but he's not giving an argument for that.
Creativity means
Look,
free will.
here,
Because if it was deterministic, you would not be able to have creativity.
Let's deal with real world example. Can you give me any example of something that can't be reduced to a combination of two or more other things?
Yeah, well, I mean, like a lot of things.
Something that's
well,
created
we're talking about
in-
free will. We're talking about free will because
Video games
so,
or art or music.
if I were to put two inputs into a machine and it would always give an output, right, based on what I put into it. Well, when it comes to free will, I could put two inputs into a machine and it can totally reject that, reject those inputs.
Sorry, you're getting talked over by Master of Clitoris.
I mean, I didn't hear. If I put two inputs into a machine, it would give me an output, right? And then, like, depending on what the inputs are, it depends on the outcome. But like, when it comes to free will and a conscious agent, you put those inputs, the outcome may not happen because he can reject those inputs. He can do more with those inputs than just a simple output. And that
The difference is with a machine you can control how many inputs there are. With a human, you don't. There may be countably infinite inputs.
Well, when it comes to the abstract thought, right? We can think of things that don't exist or that's not based off of inputs. But when we're actually trying to transfer the abstract thought into a physical machine, we would say that we can't do that.
We would say the abstract thoughts are also based on inputs.
I would say the abstract thought isn't based on inputs because you can literally think of it.
Now we're at
numbers are. What do you think numbers are?
So numbers are an abstract thought. So you can
yeah, exactly.
So you could think and that like numbers, the idea of like the things, an apple and that can move around, the idea like that proves free will more than it does determinism.
Do you
like
think
so when you invoke numbers, that doesn't help determinism.
So if I put two inputs into a machine and it creates a new thing, does the machine have free will?
Only if it chooses that different outcome. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't have free
Look,
will.
you're begging the
because it has to
question when
choose
you say
outcome.
if it chooses.
Like it doesn't. I'm not begging any question. He's the one who asked the question. Oh,
the machine created.
Do you know what begging the question is?
All right. So the fact is, circular reason. The fact is.
Okay, so then how is
we know our consciousness exists. We already agreed that thinking exists, right? So the fact is that
Why don't you just answer the question, dude?
You just said my reasoning isn't circling because he asked the question.
Oh no! If the machine puts out a different outcome, if the machine puts out a different outcome from within the variables, right? That's not free will. That's randomness because the machine is not conscious agent.
Why?
Because randomness has to do with non-conscious agents, and conscious free will has to do with conscious agents.
No,
how do you know the machine isn't conscious because it made the free will choice?
Because how do you
using the
say here's the
tasteless
thing?
argument?
What variables give you the ability to be able to bring up the fact that this machine is able to be conscious? There's nothing. It does nothing. There is not a variable in the physical world that says a machine can be conscious or a rock can be conscious. Not one variable. How'd you come up to that conclusion?
No, just because we define consciousness with creatures like ourselves doesn't mean that it is impossible that there are creatures unlike ourselves that are also consciousness.
Okay, so you missed the point. What I'm trying to say. The very fact that you're doing that proves you are using free will to come up with this conclusion.
How? We know you keep repeating it, but
because I keep telling you over and over again. Determinism is A plus B equals fucking C. How don't you not understand that? Do you not know what that means? Do you not know what that means?
Fucking great.
Like that's what it means. And the
This
very
guy
fact
is
that
the
you
king
keep
of question
denying
begging.
A plus B equals C
And you
is
know what?
question begging.
He's amazing.
No, it's
If you
not.
ask him a yes or no question, he will never answer yes or no.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna let you fucking use a fucking fallacy question or
If it's a yes or no
Fallacy
question, how is you answering yes or no fucking you being
because
abused in
when
some way?
you tell someone to answer a yes or no question, you're giving them, you're telling them that they're not allowed to
Look, if
say
it's
the rules.
really,
They have
if
to
it's
say
a
yes or
loaded
no to the
question, if it's a loaded
Yeah.
question, then
All
you'd be able
yes
to
or no
point
questions are
out.
loaded questions.
Hello?
Yeah, you can
No,
answer the
what the
question.
fuck?
All loaded questions are yes or no
Are
questions.
you
Even
awake
if
right now? Yes or no? Is that a loaded question? Fucking idiot.
Maybe I'm asleep. Maybe I'm sleeping in my no, sorry.
Oh
So
my
here's the
God.
point. All loaded questions.
Sounds like it.
All you do
yes
is
or
you
no
just say,
questions.
yes, I think so.
No. All the questions.
Do you think you're
all
awake
yes or,
right
all
now?
yes or no questions that you have asked me have
What a
been loaded
fucking
questions.
idiot, dude.
All questions that you have asked me has been loaded questions.
I love how cocksure he
That's
is.
false. Patently.
No, it's not false. It's false. It's not false at all. The fact is that when you say, "Hey, does it work like this?" Yes or no. And if there's a third fucking position,
No,
then
they're
fuck
not
no,
saying
doesn't
does it work like
that.
this. They're saying, do you think
And
it works
yes or
like
no
this?
when it apply.
There's also lots of questions where we haven't given only yes or no options. Like,
And
please,
can you
determine your terms you're using? That's an open question.
Okay, so the variable is a yes or no question. If it was deterministic, why wouldn't I just answer?
I think I understand his reasoning.
Yeah, circular.
It's not circular
Well, okay,
at all
so
because we
you're
have the
saying-
physical
look-
body. You're the only one who's doing circular reasoning. You're doing circular reasoning and you're just projecting on me. You're doing the fallacy. You're invoking circular reasoning, but you haven't justified why you are saying it's just circular reasoning.
The fallacy is when somebody
That's a
says that
fallacy.
you're committing a fallacy, but it's not true. But
No, that's not the fallacy. The fallacy is saying that the information is wrong because someone committed a fallacy.
Right, no, Fryan's right about the fallacy.
All right.
Fryan is correct here.
Fryan, is your
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Fryan, is your inference to go from given determinism, there's only one way things could have been physically, as far as causes and effects. Therefore, mentally, there's only a certain way things could have gone. Is that kind of you're definitely making a relation between like the mental world and the physical world, and you're saying that because the physical world is constrained in some way, so is the mental world. And I want to know how
the physical world, there is randomness.
But isn't that what you're doing? Isn't that your reasoning? You're saying the physical world is constrained by causality in some way, and therefore so is. Then why does determinism predict that we can't make video games?
I'm saying,
how are you getting to that?
I'm saying determinism, the outcome will always be the same in determinism. And because the outcome is always the same in determinism, without someone choosing something other than the outcome, the conscious agent, then there would never be anything different. But because we have free will and we're conscious agent, we can choose a different outcome.
Can I just quickly say, you see why there's a dichotomy there, right?
Yeah.
So there is no combination.
No. There is a combination because it's a false dichotomy. Because you're thinking of randomness in a magical realm. I'm thinking of randomness in the physical realm.
Yeah, hold on. Hey, what do you think begging the question is?
Some like fucking using the premise.
Your microphone is not.
Yo, you keep forgetting, like you always fix it because now you just move the mic closer to your face. So can you stop forgetting that?
Using the conclusion with the premise in it, or
using your conclusion, the premise in it. No, I mean it's kind of works, but it's really sloppy. So
I could probably
begging the question is when your premise, your conclusion is in one of your premises.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. And
okay, so now, do you understand why you were begging the question when you say like?
No, I don't, because my premise is not in one of my conclusions.
Well, you don't even have a fucking premise, so that's true. You don't even have an argument.
Well, I do have a premise. You don't have a fucking premise.
What's the premise?
The premise is that we know that determinism is not the right. There's randomness.
His
We
premise is
also
free
know.
will.
We also know that we have physical evidence of the creations of free will. If it was deterministic, there would be no random. There would be no physical evidence.
So evidence
of free will.
Evidence of
Of
free will is a creation of free will. Is that what you just
The
said?
evidence of free will is men imagining new concepts that don't exist within the variables of the physical world.
The physical world contains. Wait, what? I can't.
The evidence of free will is the things that men create through contemplation and their consciousness that don't exist in any variable that can be fed to them by the physical world.
Okay, why do you think imagination is constrained by the physical world? I don't understand that.
I never said imagination was constrained by the
But that's exactly what you're saying.
That's
You're saying,
so when I'm saying the variables have no play on the imagination, that's constraining to you.
what is your conception of the relationship between mind and matter? Like, do you think that mental states have to correspond to, like, changes in mental states have to correspond to changes in physical states? Or do you think that the mental world is like unhinged from the physical world in some sense?
I think consciousness is a universal law, but in order for you to have a consciousness, you have to have a structure that supports your consciousness, which aka the physical body.
You have to have a brain to have a consciousness. You don't have to have a body to have a consciousness.
Well, I mean, you have to have something that, like, something that can allows your consciousness to exist, and which is the structure of the body.
A brain.
Or the brain, whatever. But even then, like, yeah, I guess you do technically have a consciousness, but like, you do need something to contemplate upon, right?
I have a
and
problem.
If you're nothing to contemplate upon, how can you contemplate on nothing?
Can you justify that things that are created did not exist before they were created?
Hold on.
Did not exist before they were created.
So I'll show you what I mean. Is
So you want me to prove the negative?
creation? I would say that it can be the case that all creations are a combination of things that existed before. You would say that's false. You would say that all creations do not exist until they're created. Can you justify that assertion?
So for you to be right on what you're saying, that all creation is a combination of something, then you have to prove to me.
That's not my claim. I said it may be the case.
You take
No, it may be
any
the case.
example, and I will give
Well,
you
I
a
don't think
plausible account of how it's a combination of things.
I don't think it is the case because.
Okay, well, great. Now you're just saying nuh-uh.
Why? I'm
to
trying to tell
my
you. I'm trying to tell you the reason why it's not the case is because we add to it on things that don't physically fucking exist as the input.
Can you give an example of when we've done that?
Written word, written language, the various types of different written learns, the phonetic alphabet, the pictograph. That's one. Those are actually several I just gave. If you think about all the languages and how they're all different.
But letters are just combinations of lines in different orders.
So if letters are a combination of lines in order, okay. So tell me how letters or lines in order make phonetic are being applied to phonetic sound. How are the lines being applied?
They're not. They're representations of the phonetic sound.
Okay, and that proves.
But we chose arbitrarily.
That proves creation. Okay, maybe and then we also have other evidence because you're claiming that these lines, you're claiming that people can see lines, therefore they can create written word.
It's just association. All we do is
no. You're claiming that they see lines and therefore they were determined to make a written word.
I'm claiming it could be the case that all they did
Well,
was
I
they see lines and then they go, okay, we can put lines in different positions. We also have sounds, and all we can do is associate sounds to those lines. And that's the basis built from there. Okay. So both sounds and lines existed in the physical.
So how do you explain the difference
before the creation?
How do you explain the difference in the phonetic alphabet versus the pictograph?
Versus
wait, the abstract thought of the phonetic alphabet.
Wait. How would you explain
abstract thought? How the abstract thought?
Hold on.
The abstract. No. I was in the middle of something. I'm asking him, not you. I was in the middle of something. The abstract thought of making the phonetic alphabet, going from pictograph to the phonetic alphabet, because that abstract thought is not something that can be observed in the physical world. So how did someone say, hey, you know what? Let's do this system like this versus just remembering things. A lack of is not a lack of is not a necessity.
Look, dude,
something that
the
doesn't
difference
exist, something
between
that is
the
not
difference-
needed
hold on,
and doesn't
hold on,
exist is not a
hold on.
necessity.
The difference between like pictographic, like written language, and something like what the hell's whatever Sumerian language is, whatever that is, or even our modern phonetic alphabet. The only difference is in complexity, right? We have an evolution from pictography to an ABCdery.
Actually, it didn't happen.
In the history of language, dum dum.
It didn't happen linearly like that, dum dum. But go ahead.
Yeah, actually, it fucking did.
No, it didn't. You fucking asshole! It came in multiple
Yeah,
original.
let me source you, bud.
So you're making the claim that it happened linearly when it. I know you want.
The problem is you can't epistemically know that it happened.
Your Bible is false, by the way.
acausally.
Abraham is wrong.
You cannot epistemically know that it happened acausally. You just insert free will. You just posit free will.
No, I'm not. I'm
justify
not
that.
inserting free will. I'm saying free will exists because of this. We know the fact that.
But the evidence that you're pointing to.
The evidence that I pointed to shows evidence of free will. It doesn't show evidence.
No,
of
because
determinism.
before you can epistemically know whether it was due to free will or not, you can't put it in the box as evidence for free will or determinism.
What would be the need to have a written language? What would be the physical variable to have a written language?
The need or like the utility?
Yeah, what would be the physical variable to have a written language?
Are you asking about the
I'm asking
what's the
what would be
utility
the
of language?
fucking need or the physical fucking reason to have a fucking physical
To compete
written
with other
language?
tribes.
Yeah, it's just
Compete with other tribes.
utility.
Oh,
It's just
so hey, you know what, guys? I got an idea. We're gonna make a written language and we're gonna beat the other tribes. So you're saying
Right.
that's the
Like,
deterministic fucking value.
That
what's
could
the
be the
need
case.
to have a
call bullshit.
trebuchet?
I call bullshit.
What's the
I
need to
said you
have
pulled that
a
out your house and you have no
crossbow?
evidence for that.
You have no evidence for what you're
I
talking
do have
about.
evidence. I do have evidence for it. We know for a fact that A plus B doesn't always equal C. We know for the fact that we create things that are not verifiable in the physical world with any variable. There's no variable. There is no variable for me to make a Nintendo.
There's no there's no variable for you to make a Nintendo. Yeah, circuits exist. People want to be entertained. 2 and 2 together.
And this is the fallacy that you keep going over. You keep saying because in a deterministic world we never got to the point where we can make a Nintendo. And this is
I'm
the
not
fallacy
committing
you
the.
keep
I'm not
mistaking.
committing the fallacy fallacy.
You're
If-
saying
if
there's
I'm a
multiple people
determinist, we
fucking
live in
talking,
the
bro.
deterministic world.
We do not live in a deterministic world because I
Look,
come
I'm
into
saying if I'm a
if I come into
determinist,
you
and I
kick
am,
you, if
we
someone
live
if
in a
someone kicks your door
deterministic
in,
world. So you just saying that
if
we've
someone
never
kicks
got to
you're
the point.
you're just
Hello?
invoking that we live in
Can
a
I?
deterministic
I
world.
was in the middle of a sentence. So I'm a determinist, which means that I believe that we live in a deterministic world. So you saying that we never got to the point where we make a Nintendo because determinism is false, just begging the question against my determinist view.
Okay, so here's the evidence that determinism is false. Randomness. Fuckface.
What's random?
Michael has sourced you.
So
Wait, are you assuming that
fact is that
randomness is true, or
no, I'm not assuming. I'm not assuming. There is time. Well, quantum physics already proven that randomness does take place, where the outcome is never always going to be dictated by the variables.
look? How do
And
you
then we
how
also
do you know?
hold on. And then we also know in the macro universe there is times where the physical laws are canceled out. Hold on. We know that in there's times when physical laws are canceled out, right? And those physical laws, when they're canceled out, does not await on either side for the outcome to be a certain way with the variables that are put in, and that's evidence of randomness, which disproves determinism.
How do you know that they just don't have enough information to determine whether or not it's random?
Well, because we have the information. We have the information to know.
You're assuming that we have
No,
all
no,
the
we don't-
all the
no, no,
information.
no.
How do
I'm
you
not assuming-
know?
We don't need all the information.
Yes,
right?
we do.
No, we don't. We don't need all
Well,
the
how do
information.
you know that
to
if we
say
had all
randomness
the
exists.
information, we wouldn't be able to determine the outcome?
So you're saying there is something that's not being accounted for that we don't know exists.
I'm saying like you know that you don't have all the information, and I'm saying, how do you know that in that information that we don't have, that we would be able to make a deterministic system which would produce reliable results on this thing that we're calling random?
Because we can control for the different variables.
You don't. That's
No,
the
we can
answer.
control. No, we do, because we can control for the different variables that are being put in. And when those things are evenly matched and they're not weighted to go one way or the other,
You just said that we can control for things that we can't know about.
we control for the different variables.
That's you
And
just
you know
use that
saying-
in you just use that in response to there may be variables that we can't control.
I never
you
said
just
that.
you're just saying
I asked him. I said, so I asked him, you're saying that is how it is. I never said that. So the very fact is we can control for all the variables. We're two, because not every physical law is going to affect every single thing. There's things in the physical laws and the different physical methods of how the universe runs. It doesn't always affect everything, even if it comes in view of that thing.
There's two questions that you can't answer on this. You need to answer in order to show that it's
Well, I mean,
truly random.
you have it. You're making a positive claim too, but I'll keep fucking answering all your questions.
You made the assertion that
You
randomness
assert that
exists.
determinism exists in the universe.
What? Look, I can't even hear you because you're so close to your fucking mic because you'd rather be louder.
You asserted that determinism is real, and it disproves for.
I said that I'm a determinist, so I believe that
Yes,
determinism
and that's
is
an
true.
assertion. So it's like saying I believe in God.
Yeah, it is an assertion. And you know what the proof for the assertion is? My fucking mental states about my beliefs about determinism, you fuck.
And I reject the fact that you're using your free will, aka imagination, to say determinism is real. That's circular reasoning.
It's not my imagination, it's my fucking brain states.
No, it's your imagination, because the fact that you're contemplating on things that had no variable.
My beliefs. Look, everything that we say.
Your beliefs have no fucking variable, bro.
Oh my, yeah, it's like he's using tasteless speak.
Chum,
Yeah,
isn't
like-
proof demonstrable?
Like the fact
Yeah.
is that
then you can't demonstrate your mental states to me, can you?
Well, I can give you all sorts of reasons to believe that I think that certain
you
way.
can give
But you just
your
wanna play
imagination. You can give
less
reasons that
interesting
you created
conversation than
Yeah, I don't really think it's an assertion. I just think
you can give.
I mean, you can assert it. I just didn't hear you assert it yet.
I did say I'm a determinist.
Just say. Well, I don't think that means that you are certain of your position.
I believe that determinism is true. That's all it means to have a mental state. My beliefs are mental states.
Are you certain it is true?
Look, you're gonna make this a fucking boring ass conversation.
So yeah, go on. Yeah, let's go back to grilling Fryan.
Hey, Fryan, if you scroll up, did you see the evolution of the English alphabet that I posted?
I'm sorry, Orson. It was going really well. I was getting to a really funny part.
So what do you believe the came from the Phoenicians?
Sorry, chum.
What,
Do you want to go? Sorry,
No,
I thought
it's
you guys
okay.
were done. I
Let's
thought you
change
guys were
track. Let's
concluding
change
that.
tracks. Yeah, it's fine.
Is this Michael? Is this Michael that posted it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking at a certain script of language, right? That has a different root language. Like even the oral and the written word don't match this language. Like if you go to Africa with the what's that tribe?
Okay, hang on just a second. Hang on, bud. Hold on. Okay, listen. You disagree that our written language moved from pictography to an ABCdery, and here is proof that it did.
You're having the year 588 CE European or non-circular.
That's not proof. That's evidence.
You're having the fact that in 588 CE they went to a alphabetic language which they picked up from trade, not because they made the slowly progression.
Well, wait a minute. Let's just deal with one claim at a time. You
That's the
said
claim
it
you're
didn't.
making.
Here's
I'm making one
evidence that
claim.
it did.
I'm saying this is not evidence because you're dealing with a time period where they came into contact with people who had an alphabetic language. And so therefore their inputs or the variables did not come about from the slow working of determinism. It came about through someone else's free will teaching it to them.
This
When
is
they
a
decided to
different
reject
thing
it,
altogether. Look, so you contested that written language moved from pictography to an ABCdery. And here is evidence that that is the case. Is this not evidence that written language went from pictography to an ABCdery?
No.
Oh, it's not? Then what do you
I
call
told you that.
this?
I called. If you look at the time frames, you can see when they can contact with people with alphabetic
Why would that matter? Why would that matter?
Why would that matter? Because the people with their free will created the concept of alphabet and or the phonetic written word, and they talked to these people and they accepted it.
It's inconsequential to the fact that our written language went from, at one point, a pictography to now what we have is an ABCdery.
Okay, so what you can see is that your claim is that we slowly, the phonetic language came from the written word, and we can see 100% that their influence of the phonetic language came from an abstract thought of someone else.
So what? We're not examining that. We're examining your claim, bud.
That's my fucking claim, that it was born out of free will of the consciousness, and that
No,
abstract
you
thought was
said-
taught to these people through the Silk Road.
Yo, let's just deal with this one at a time and go slow.
I am dealing with it right now, and I'm telling you why you're wrong. You don't like the
You
information that you're getting.
contested that we went from a
Another
pictography
example,
to an
the
ABCdery.
fact that you're rejecting
That
what
it
I'm saying is
evolved,
another
right?
example of free will.
Here is evidence that that did in fact occur, and you're saying, well, it did.
That's not evidence of what you're saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. You're claiming.
contested
Your claim was this. Your claim was this, that it was born out of the variables slowly through determinism. But what I'm saying that it wasn't,
No.
and the evidence, yes, you fucking did. I've been pushing a free will, and this is against free will. You're making a deterministic argument. Don't fucking lie now.
No. The only claim that I contested was yours saying
The fact that you're asserting evidence to disprove the fact that I believe in free will means you fucking are implying that you believe in determinism.
calm down, buddy. You'll be okay.
You're not gonna fucking lie.
Calm down.
You're fucking
Sir.
implying determinism. You don't have to
Sir.
say the words "I believe in determinism" for everyone to see that you're fucking making a deterministic argument.
Sir, calm down.
Dude, you calm down, you fucking Marxist piece of shit.
There's no need for that.
This is amazing.
All Marxists gonna get hung.
Argumentum ad Marxist. Just people who disagree with me are wrong.
No.
and they're
Oh,
Marxist.
bullshit. You could sit there and say people disagree. We all fucking know what the line of thinking and premise to conclusion is on their fucking ideology. And this is Marxist fucking 101 because it gets rid of your deterministic values.
That was a hard effort.
If we really want to get into it, I can prove to everyone that you're a fucking Marxist.
Dude, he's doing donuts right now. Not even just left turn. Yeah, okay.
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure,
I'd like
I'm pretty
to.
sure I've
I'd like to
proven
hear
multiple
that.
times that you're a fucking Marxist before.
Yeah, let's get into the proof that Michael's a Marxist. I want to hear it.
He
Michael,
believes material
are you up
conditions
for that?
creates class differences. Ban. He's a
Yeah, that's fine. I want him to argue from what he knows about me currently.
You believe in. I only need to know one thing: your ideology, your prime premise. You believe material conditions causes the division in class, and it dictates the behavior of man, and it's deterministic.
How do you know that I believe that?
Because I talked to you multiple times, fuckface.
Okay, and so what is it that I believe? You summarize my belief.
You believe in material conditions is what separates the difference in man and
Hey,
class.
pull the microphone out of the back of your throat. I'm not your dad.
Believe the
It's
material
okay.
fucking conditions
Not that
is
you
what
knew
separates
him, but-
class and fucking behavior in man.
Look, I still can't hear you. I don't know if it's anybody else.
Yeah, play the fucking game, Michael.
Getting really close to his mic and just like over modulating.
Michael.
Yeah, he's either really close or like really far away. It's one or the
Michael,
other, and I can't hear the guy.
when you get home, Michael, we need to talk about your Marxism.
His distance from his mic correlates with fucking the mic.
Michael, I would have unfriended you if I knew that you were a Marxist.
Aw, that's sweet.
Better. Wait, it's not better read the dead. That's the thing that's a Marxist.
But Big Trump, you're
Not
a
better
Marxist
Red
as
than
well.
dead. No, I'm not.
Yeah. So communism doesn't mean you're not a Marxist. If you're not a communist, doesn't mean you're not a Marxist. Marxism is the premise, and one conclusion you can get from Marxism without any other variables is communism.
Can you define what you're calling Marxism?
The idea that material conditions separates the classes as men. That's the prime premise of
Realism?
Marxism. That's the prime premise of
The
Marxism.
definition of people being different classes is the fact that they own different amounts of material.
So the prime premise of Marxism is that material conditions does the separate classes and dictates behavior in man.
That material conditions dictates behavior? Wait, how is that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think what you're defining there is determinism
I don't
and
think
the
you're
definition
thinking
of
of
a
anything.
class hierarchy.
I don't think you're thinking of anything, because if the material condition determines class hierarchy, it will also determine, because the classes are made up of people and individuals, and the material conditions determines behavior in a single individual. That's what Marxism is at its prime premise.
Material determines behavior in a what?
Material conditions determines behavior in an individual.
In an individual.
That's what Marxism. I disagree with.
I don't think that's.
That is the prime premise of Marxism.
The prime premise of Marxism is from each according to his or her ability to each according to his.
That's not a premise of logical thought there.
What?
What?
You know what a premise and conclusion is, dude? I doubt it.
Yeah, we actually had to correct you on that.
That's the foundation of Marxism.
You actually
That's like
that is a slogan that came out of the prime premise, which is material conditions. Have you ever read Marx's theory of history?
How the fuck are you guys hearing this guy?
Have you ever
Fryan,
read
can
mic
you
keeps
rephrase-
fading out.
Have you ever read
Dude,
Marx's theory
Fryan,
of history?
look.
Shut the fuck up, Michael. Have you ever read the
Hold on. Hey,
Shut the
Fryan,
fuck
can
up,
you do me a
Michael.
favor and
Michael,
refresh,
dude.
dude? Because I refreshed and I'm still having problems hearing you, man.
Yeah, it's because you have bitch ears. There's certain people with bitch ears, and there's certain people who don't have bitch ears.
It's like the mic's in your mouth or you're across the room. It's one or the other.
Mike is just
I actually gotta go. I gotta go. You're a lame. I'll see
Yeah,
y'all
I'm
later.
sure.
Yeah,
Run away
yeah,
now.
yeah. I don't get to hang out for 3 hours on a time and not do anything.
And not
Obviously, I did
support
today.
your arguments. Yep.
Yeah, I did support
Hey,
my
go
argument. You didn't
take
support
your
one
Walmart-
argument.
Take your microphone to Walmart and exchange it for a
You didn't
new
even
one. bud.
justify one of your fucking beliefs.
Yeah, it's
dude.
okay. You can run away, man.
Nah, fuck you, dude.
No.
Hold on.
Nah. And he's gone.
That was great.
How the fuck did you guys hear him? I was using headphones. I was plugging them in, unplugging them. I couldn't hear the guy for shit.
That was what we call an extended milking.
Yeah, his nipples must be pretty sore now.
That was hard to
Nipples.
listen to.
His nipples actually.
I mean teeth.